Hello, everybody. This is that 65 Deluxe Reaper from yesterday. Got a lot of it cleaned up. I'll show you guys in the next video on it. Everything is done, but I got all the remaining hiss and hum totally gone. And I'm about to get to your amp questions. This is my SG, and a while back I put some 9s on it because I'd seen that video of Rick Beato's on our thick strings really better, and you know, the 9s sounded better than I thought on the Gibsons he had. So I put some on here, and I can't play the damn thing in tune because my hands are too big, I guess. I guess my hands are just too heavy. So if I play really painfully lightly, here's a C. If I play in passing, like I'm really playing though, it just gets, everything gets pulled sharp. It's not from downward angle, it's sort of pressing, just fretting. Same for other strings. A little less so on that, but the low E string, that's just from fretting. So I don't think that I can buy, I don't think I can play 9s on this guitar. So while I talk to you guys, I'm going to be putting 10s on this. Shades of last week in a much smaller thing. So let's get to some questions here while I do all this stuff. I've used 11s and 12s in the past, but I've had hand issues, as I've mentioned, so I'm trying to get away with as little as possible. But 9s, no. And everyone's like, Billy Gibbons uses 7s and 8s. I'm like, that's great. On the records, it sounded awesome, though he wasn't. Yeah, I listened to that old original recording from 72, 74. Those were not 8s. I think he called them baling wire at the time, but that might have been his own mythology. Let's see. The first ones aren't in sequence as they were actually asked, but that's all I can do. John Burns, where do I get these almost mint condition amps from? The Marshall the other day looked brand new inside. The Fender looked too good to be true. Well, yeah, I did have to make sure it wasn't repro stuff. I am very fortunate in that I have developed some kind of reputation where people seek me out, and I get some really nice stuff coming in, and I can kind of choose what I let through the gates. Don't need to work on Blues Juniors if I don't want to. I don't need to take in a Hot Rod DeVille unless I feel sorry for the owner. Though, in fairness, Hot Rod DeVille's did pay for my car notes. Literally every month I pay my car note from the 2 or 3 Hot Rod DeVille's that came in, all with the same problems, and Hot Rod Deluxes. And so people are like, those amps are great. Well, why do they all fail the same ways, and why do they all fail the same ways that should have been prevented from the factory, and haven't they fixed it in 30 years? So I lose patience with certain companies when they just habitually rip off musicians. And then I'm the bad guy explaining this to people, and it's just crazy how people blame the messenger, or an amp can be really objectively terrible, and people magically hear fantastic things because they paid a lot of money for it. Anyway, so yeah, I'm very fortunate, and I'm very, very I'm very honored to be trusted with such gems. Hey, Merrill, speaking of gems, your cab came in for your basement, so your basement's going to get done up pretty quick, and we'll get you some speakers, and your life will be good in a very loud way, because, that AC30 is not loud enough. You need a Bassman AB165 to AA864 conversion to go with. Run that in stereo. And it's a good thing you live down in Coldwater, or you get evicted. Any of your neighbors within 5 miles might complain still, but that's fun. Let's see. Joshua Stevens, Fender Strat through a hot rod, a JCM 800 that he built. Good times. That's good. It is a good time. thanks to channels like this. Well, I appreciate that, Joshua. Matt Johnson's having good rainy day in South Carolina, so looking forward to some quiet talk. I think you might have the rain we had the past 2 days. Though given how those mountains work, you might have your own rain. But I'll share my rain with you. Hey, Gringo Pig, speaking of rain. Having a lovely Scottish summer day, I hope. Late spring. Mark, surgery is Monday morning. Good. We'll keep you in our thoughts, Mark. I know you've been waiting a long time for that surgery. It's cold, wet Saturday morning in L.A. as well, Wes says. So, Gringo Pig, if you're feeling cold and wet up there in Scotland, know that Los Angeles is having your same weather. Though I think Los Angeles cold is not Scotland's cold. Let's see. Hey, Tim Gaines. So you got that amp of John Sumner's. Good, yeah. I worked on his DC-3. I don't remember that I worked on a DC-3. I remember John because I know his daughter. And I guess if he says I worked on a DC-3, I did. If you have any problems with it, Tim, let me know. I will work on Mesas for good people, but I would rather turn away most Mesas. You have to raise the action to make them playable. Well, it's not a matter... Oops, just a second. Not a matter of raising the action. It's a matter of my big, heavy hands and fat fingers, apparently, just cause a string to go down against the fretboard behind the fret, and that would be even worse with higher action. Not trying to argue with you, Rob. I'm sorry, not trying to... Yeah, not trying to argue with you, Rob, but I am, because in my case, that raising the action would make me play even worse in tune. Hey, Mike Silver, glad you're able to watch live too. Built a 5E3 Deluxe. It's great. That's cool. I had a tech go through it and check your work. Not a bad idea at all. When I crank it, there's a buzzing rattle that only appears on some notes. Ideas. Well, they're... feeling the tops of these strings all feel new, and the bottoms of them I can feel where the frets are. These have been on there a while. I gave nines a good shot. There are several things that could be happening. You could have loose mechanical connections in the cabinet. Speaker could be loose, baffle could be loose. Very common on tweed amps for the baffles to be loose because they're screwed in place with tiny little screws, and the nuts on the other side are sometimes in hard to reach areas. And you could also have microphonic tubes, or you could have a bad solder joint, some combination thereof. So you just gotta chopstick while the amp's on, and play a chord and hit things inside the amp with the chopstick, see if you can make it happen, or see if any of the tubes make kind of glassy, pingy sounds or rattly sounds, or if putting your hand on the cabinet or putting your hand on the chassis and putting some pressure on makes those sounds go away, you could have vibrations there. It could also, if you're sitting on a hardwood floor, it could be the cabinet kind of rocking back and forth in small ways against the hardwood floor. And the bane of my existence, because I have rack shelves, you've seen them in other videos with chassis and stuff on them, I have a lot of things in the environment when I'm testing an amp that can ring sympathetically. And so sometimes I'll be sitting here and I'll think, oh damn, I got a problem with that, with this amp or that, and I realize no, it's the tube shield on an amp 5 feet away vibrating in time. Just a second, I'm gonna get my fretboard stuff. I'll make sure that we don't have any belt issues. Stupid lights in the way. The light's in the way. The light was in the way, and there's a speaker down there I didn't want to step in. So, hence the not very graceful ballet. Let's see. I don't have the backstory to those amps in Dawson because I've not asked for the backstory. Usually, if amps have a backstory, I hear about it whether I hear about it whether I've asked or not. People who have backstories tend to tell me those backstories, sometimes in great detail. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you. Did I buy a Caddy DeVille? Hell no. I like to drive. Cadillacs just take all the joy out of driving. They're just like flying couches. I drive a Volkswagen Golf Turbo, which is about as fast as anyone can go in an urban environment. And it is so damn quick and fun. And if I take it up into the Ozarks and hit those little twisty roads where the sign says turn 35 miles an hour, mwahaha. In my mind, I'm testing Porsches in the Bavarian Alps. And, as far as the G's experience, it's pretty much the same. Can't go 180 miles an hour, but I can get to 120 real fast. And I don't tend to speed in town. I'll go, 5 over whatever, but I get from 0 to the speed limit like that. It's a good feeling. Let's see. Lovely bird. Yes, we still don't have a name for this lovely creature. I have had some suggestions, but we try not to get too political on here. It's sunny in Scotland. Well, you enjoy that, Gringo. You stole LA's weather. Cold, wet in Pacific Palisades, Victor says. Let's see. D. Yamarov says he got rid of his AC30 handwired, got himself a Mojo Tone AC3015. Yeah, they have a nice little kit, or you can buy the build from them too. And finally understand the vintage Vox chime. The handwired always sounded meh. They do in stock form. They're over-filtered, and they have some really unpleasant sounding components in them. They can be made fantastic, but Mojo Tone sells a good product. I'm glad you're happy with it. That little static burst, I don't know if it came through on here, but I just heard a little burst of static through the amp. I'll keep an ear on that. The tubes in it are not the owner's tubes. They're RCAs and stuff that I had sitting around, and then some old, in this case, JJ6V6s. I have test tubes around. So I might have to go through and see if that repeats, or it could have been just a weird electronic thing from Wi-Fi or whatever. But that amp's been on for about 4 hours now, and that's the first time I've heard a noise. Do I recommend WD-40 Specialist Contact Cleaner over Deoxit D5? Hey, Peter, I've not tried a WD-40 Specialist Contact Cleaner. I just stick with the Deoxit. Now that I've sorted out that they went through a period where they had a new improved spray tube that you barely touch the button, about 3 gallons shot out. And I've got that rectified, so I actually can control the flow now. I've not seen what WD-40 has for contact cleaners, but again, for cleaning contacts like pots and sockets and stuff, do not use regular WD-40. If they have a contact cleaner, I'll check it out at some point. Hey, Martin, given that all components will eventually fail, are some companies using what's called built-in obsolescence? Well, absolutely, but the built-in obsolescence has nothing to do with the lifespan of components being a limiting factor. They're built to be obsolete because they want you to buy another one in 3 to 5 years. The problem with mass production, and if you take an economics class, this is one of the first things they teach you, is that when the electric toaster was invented, everyone wanted an electric toaster. And electric toasters were amazing, and everyone wanted one. It was a status symbol, and people saved up to buy electric toasters. And then, at some point, everyone had an electric toaster, and it worked, and it made toast just fine. And it was really hard to sell new and improved electric toasters. That's why they'd open up a checking account and get a free toaster. It wasn't much of an incentive at that point to open a checking account just to get a toaster. You already had one. So for things like that, if you make a toaster and they buy a toaster, they don't need another one for 30 years, you have fewer people to sell toasters to. So they would, part of it was incentive to really innovate, and part of it was an incentive to make sure that, hey, if we can make this toaster last 5 years and make really good toast for 5 years and then need to be replaced, maybe we can sell more toasters down the line. And that has spiraled down to where we are now, where a lot of companies do make stuff deliberately crappy. Only needs to last 5 minutes past their warranty, and then they'll sell you a new one. And then when it comes to amplifiers, with like the hot rod deluxes and stuff, they're building them to fail. And I point that out, people yell at me, but then they go and buy another one. So each time it's a $900 bit of junk. Flip side of that, 1965, this thing is 60 years old. It needed electrolytic capacitors changed out and a few little bit of things cleaned. Most of the components in that amp are working just fine 60 years later. So what's the most eye candy I can get in an amp? A train wreck, possibly? Well, I'm not a big fan of the looks of train wrecks. I think the chassis are kind of a poor layout, and the rear of it's just label maker. People, I'm not a big fan of figured maple hardwood cabs, but if that floats your boat, that's great. From a design perspective, a lot of the great looking amps are terrible industrial designs. The Fender script on the black panel amps, the deluxe reverb amplifier and all that stuff, really looks like crap from a designer's point of view. My wife makes fun of it, and she's right too, that they're terrible. He said, with an SG in his lap, which has a mixture of 19th century and what they thought would be late 20th century design aspects, ends up being very mid-century. I'm putting some fretboard oil on here while I talk to you guys. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The AC30, I think, is one of the prettiest amps ever made, and it should not be, because it's really strange and very 50s and gold plastic strips and very odd grill cloth and all that. But it looks so cool on stage behind a Telecaster or something, propped up on a stand. Marshalls are great looking amps, the old ones, through about 83. But, whatever floats your boat, floats your boat. In terms of sound, Trainwreck is fantastic at certain things. Now, if I had a Trainwreck or a customer had a Trainwreck, I would suggest making that extra gain stage bypassable, because that extra gain stage means you have no cleans available even if you roll down the volume of the guitar. It really doesn't clean up the way you expect. But if you were to make that switchable, you would have a fantastic clean channel, much more like you'd find on a Fender Bassman. And then you'd be one switch away from having the full tiger by the tail experience of playing a Trainwreck. But Ken didn't ask me when he was doing that when I was in high school. So, do I not find SGs neck heavy? Some are. This one is not. The ones with Grovers tend to be neck heavy. This has Klusons. I chose that very deliberately. And I have the Vibrola here, which also balances out. So it works very well for this one. If I had the one with the stop tail and Grovers, then yeah, I'd probably find it would have some neck dive. Whereas Magisterium says, not neck heavy, body light. But the Grovers are the main culprit traditionally on SGs. But Kluson style and the Maestro, getting the excess off so I don't soak the rosewood and have it get soft, or have the frets get soft. Nothing worse than mushy frets, right? I applied a little too much because I was talking to you guys, but it only sat on there a short while. This is F1 oil by Music Nomad, because I heard good things about it. I got some, and I don't need a big container of lemon oil like my buddy Ted Woodford uses, because he does this all day long, every day. He goes through thousands of guitars a year where he has to do this kind of thing. I do it. I've got a stable, 8 or 9 guitars, and I condition the rosewood boards maybe every third or fourth string change. So the F1 has worked well for me. That's not an endorsement because they have not paid me. If they want to pay me to say it, then I'll say it, because I do like the stuff. But yeah, if I were doing this professionally, I just have a big thing of lemon oil. We're not going to get into the lemon oil versus linseed oil argument, because Ted Woodford says lemon oil is better because it doesn't plasticize, it doesn't turn into a polymer. And I'm not ever going to argue with Ted about how to take care of a guitar. Let's see. Where were we? Thank you, Houston Rowe. Hey, James Blessed, I'm doing very well, and you are also blessed. Hey, David Minster. In the supermarket. I was there last night. I'll probably be there tomorrow. Steve Lynn, like I said, these 9s were all funky on the bottom from contacting the frets. These were on here for like 4 months. I gave them a good shot, and jury's in for me. It doesn't work. Hey, James Cassidy. Yeah, it'd be good to increase the screen grid resistors from 470 to 1 kilo ohm on your JCM 900 because modern output tubes would like that. Modern production EL34s are not even as good as what was available in the late 80s when that amp was designed. The good news is you don't have to move them off the board. You can keep the ones that are on the PCB, and you can add another 470 ohm at the tube socket, and those would be in series, so you'd still have 1K. Without making any permanent mods to the amp. So I have done very quick work on a 2-rock that came into a music store, and I opened it up and looked at it, and it just had a bad tube, so I didn't really work on it. They're built really well, my buddy Jeff McErlane loves them, and he's played a lot of stuff, and he would not play them if they did not sound good, and he would not continue to use them if they didn't last on tour, which he plays out with them. So I have never heard anything bad about 2-rock that did not come from a place of jealousy or people who just don't want to pay over X amount. And anyone who pays more than X amount is an idiot. There's an entire philosophy that a whole bunch of people subscribe to. I do not. So yeah, 2-rocks are great. If you like one, getting one. If you like one, get one. That's a sentence I meant to say. I've had a Bluto tone, was not a fan of that. Or maybe I'm not thinking of Bluto tone. Sorry, I was conflating that with the Tony Bruno Vox in my head. Sorry, Goody Guitars. I've not tried a Bluto tone. Did have a what's the company that does Dumble style things? Red Plate. Was it Red Plate? And that was an amp that came in, and they had a 88. I think they had an 8.2K or an 820 ohm, where an 82K was supposed to be in the phase inverter, and the amp had no output whatsoever. And it was an easy fix, but it had a QC sticker on it. It was like a $3,000 amp that had passed their QC. It tells me that no one at that factory ever played the damn thing before shipping it. So that's one I'd watch out for. Hey, Light Team, I need to do a video just on this question because I get asked this question every stream, and you can look at my previous streams for longer versions of this answer. Go to valvewizard.co.uk. A guy named Merlin Blinco's got a lot of great information there, including books he sells. That's the place where most people need to start, valvewizard.co.uk. See, I've got that little permanent question marks for any questions, please, thing on the screen. I've got my logo on the screen and stuff, and I can do things like this when I want to. I need to have one that just says valvewizard.co.uk. But after you watch my stream, please. Not now. Yeah, we know step in, K Tucker. The second gen Golf 1.9 GT, that is the most fun of the lot. Well, I when it was time to get mine, I drove the GT and I drove the R and I drove the turbo that I have, which is the 1.8. And I realized that while, yeah, the GT and the R were phenomenally fun, in city traffic, given that there are other cars around, and given that there are speed limits and cops have radar, I would very rarely be able to take advantage of the differences between the GT and the R over the 1.8 turbo that I have. But every month for insurance and every couple months for tires, I would be paying a big hefty premium. So in my case, logic won out. Now I've got some smudge on the Maestro and some dust in places, so I'm going to take care of the dust, then we'll take care of the smudge, and then we'll put some new strings on. This is a microfiber feather duster, and this lives in my office and is used only on electronics, guitar stuff like this, and amp front panels, and the microphones, and the light stands, and all that. And does not come in contact with like ceiling fan blades. We've got a different one for ceiling fans and stuff. No, I just had a piece of paper towel. Where did I put that? Let me put this down for a second. Let's see, next question while well, I don't need to lower the frets on this thing. They're already as low as I would want. It just, those gauge strings are too light for me. Hey, Bill Avanda. What are my thoughts on a 69 or 70 Silverface versus buying a headstrong modern take on it? I understand no right answer here. Well, no offense to the nice guys at Headstrong, but I go with the 6970 and get it put in its best possible condition. It's going to be what Headstrong was copying, and it should be, the real deal. Headstrong seems to build good amps, but I'm not a big fan of the ground scheme from what I've seen, though I've not had one physically in front of me. But they're doing some things that I'm not a huge fan of. It's not that they don't work; it's just that they don't work as well as other options in terms of how ground is done. Hey, Chad, Iraq. Yeah, people can just send a chassis, and people do. But here's the thing: I am really backed up. This 65 Deluxe and the 78 Marshall that I put on the bench yesterday morning, or the day before, and the videos hit the day before and yesterday. Those arrived mid to late February, and I got to them on what, May 1st. So I'm backed up. So I will be taking more work in very shortly. But one of the first things I say to people when they contact me is, are you fine with it maybe taking 2 months before I even can get to it? If the answer is no, that's fine. I understand there are a lot of techs in the world. But, I don't want you to say that you're fine with it and then for me to get a call every 3 days, hey, have you got to my amp yet? Have you got to my amp yet? Have you got to my amp yet? And it's not me being a snob or a gatekeeper or anything. I don't know how long an amp's going to take me to finish. So I know, all right, get the amp on the bench, do a diagnostic, order the parts for it, put it to the side, get the next amp out, either do the diagnostic or resume work. When the parts arrive for the first amp, you fix what you knew was done, and then you say, all right, well, that layer of problem has been solved. That reveals any remaining issues. So I can't say the amp will be done in exactly 7 days, or even or the amp will be done day after tomorrow. Yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it, in good faith, and it'll be done when it's done in good faith, and you'll be informed during that process. But it means that I turn away an awful lot of people who want me to work on things, and I cannot take in all the things that people want me to work on. Otherwise, I'd say, are you fine with a 3-year wait list? And I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to put anyone else in that position. Just 1 second, Mile High. I swear to God, I had another paper towel out. Maybe I used it for the fretboard oil and don't remember. Anyway, I got a little bit of naphtha on deck. Oh, here's a little scrap I already had prepped for the naphtha. All right. See, all that planning just goes to hell. Naphtha is such good stuff. Little dab will do you. Make sure that's closed. Don't want to refinish the floor. This is one of my favorite things in the world. Watching all the smudges go back to being gorgeous. Other people have smudges. I have smudges. It's a small amount. I'm going to throw it in the trash. If it were a larger amount, I'd take it outside so when it spontaneously combusts. All right. And after I got the strings on, I'll do a little machine oil in a few spots on this bridge. All right, we're working on a 72 high watt DR103. Awesome. There's a S14 varistor between the neutral termination, the Bulgin connector, and the voltage selector. What would be the use of this? Noise? Well, it's got a limit between the neutral termination and the voltage selector. So you're sure it's a varistor? Not a thermistor. If it's a thermistor, it would limit current. And there's another one that acts as a filter, but a varistor between neutral and is the voltage selector in line with, is the neutral connected through that to the voltage selector? Then it's just going to be a current limiter, and you could, if it's defective, the amp could do without it, and there are better ones on the market today. But if it works, that's what it do. Hey, tone control on a 73 Deluxe Reverb. He's replacing the Mallory filter caps and Mallory bias caps with F&T. Okay. Should I replace any other Mallory caps left with F&T or Sprague? Neither. All the rest of them are going to be cathode bypass caps. F&T makes a really stupid, huge one about the size of my fist for the dual 25. It's not necessary. And the Sprague atoms are okay, but they cost a lot more than necessary. I use these little, let's see here. These little 63 volt Vishays. You can get these at tubesandmore.com. These are fantastic. That's what I use in almost every Fender that comes in. The 63 volts, so they'll pretty much last 50, 60 years as a cathode, where there's only like 2 volts typically in a Fender. Real nice, pretty. They sound great, and they cost a lot less than a Sprague atom for that value, for the needed value. Hey, Sebastian. After a while, my content starts to repeat. Well, it's an accurate reflection of what life is like as a guitar amp tech. You do a lot of the same things over and over again, and I do try to vary the things I highlight as possible, but I'm not setting out to create content and then choosing amps for that. I have amps I'm working on, and I share that. And sometimes the video will just be on, hey, let's talk about bias considerations or, this part of the circuit. But while I try to take this channel seriously, because this community of people watching means a lot to me, and I try to give good information, I can't go out and find an amp just to have content. And a more educational chat with more of a deep dive. I've been thinking about doing the Patreon thing, and the only thing I could offer Patreons of extra added value. You know, it doesn't matter if you see the video first. My God, we're not kids. But I would need to give you guys something extra, and that'd be the kind of thing I would try to do. But it's hard, aside from a special monthly Patreon thing, to do that regularly. Even if I just film myself doing 3 hours of work and put it all out there, means I've got to go through and edit that just to make sure, okay, I didn't pass gas, or that you don't hear me make a wheezy sound with my nostrils and stuff. Or, you know, if I got up to get myself a cup of coffee, I clip that out. So even just the most basic stuff where I'm not making a produced video, I'm trying to make it pleasant to watch and not have you hear me go, you know, stuff like that. You know, I know you just heard that, but then again, it is that time of year. So, I mean, that's just honest. So those take a long time to do. And yesterday I considered filming myself doing 2.5 hours work just cleaning that 65 Deluxe Reverb, and I thought, no, because that's 3 hours I've got to edit afterwards, and that turns into 9 hours. And I'd rather watch the new season of Andor, so that's what I did while working. And it's really good. It's really good. Omelet Socks got a 66 Vox Viscount. Nice. I hope that you never have any problems with it, because the old germanium transistors and diodes in that thing are impossible to find these days. Hey, Bottom Kitchen. If a 63 AC10 has a replaced power transformer, it's only 240 volts, what would be the best option? Yeah, you can get a replacement for it, but you have to get it from Mercury, and it's going to be very expensive. Probably the easiest solution, just get a step-up power transformer. You can get them for like $80 or so. I've got one down on the floor that you guys don't see very often. But I can take 240 volts down to 120, and 120 up to 240, and all that fun stuff. You know, so look into a step-up transformer, and you can use modern, you know, American wall voltage to give your amp 240, or 230 if you want to make the amp a little bit happier. Hey, Bill Lavonda. Yeah, it takes stuff from out of state all the time. Almost every amp that you see, about half the amps you've seen in the last 6 months have been stuff shipped to me. And even Merrill, who lives locally, brought his from out of state because he lives in Mississippi. But we don't hold that against him. I thought about you a couple weeks ago, Merrill. I guess 2 weeks ago. Nikki and I were down in South Haven for some reason, and we're like, it is a beautiful day. We did a bunch of yard work this morning. Let's go get a milkshake. So I took her down to the Velvet Cream in Hernando. It was good. Nifty Footwork. Is switching the V3 reverb driver tube and Fender Deluxe reverb from an AT7 to an AU7 a good idea? It is a sideways idea. It won't hurt a damn thing. You will experience less reverb because it's not driving the signal as hot. But it won't hurt anything. The issue is you're going to have a different signal-noise ratio. The better way to do it would be to keep the AT7 and either change the linear taper reverb 100K pot in the amp to audio taper, so you have more fine control over the level there, or to put, say, a 47K to 100K resistor in series before the 100K reverb pot, which would give you a little more low end in your reverb, but you won't really notice it at that stage. That way, the reverb pot just wouldn't go as high if you didn't want it to, because the issue that people are trying to fix, whether they know it or not, is that the reverb recovery pot is linear taper. So it goes from nothing to a whole lot of reverb all at once. And this string packet just won't open. You know, it's like bags of cheese. As far as I can tell, the only difference between the Kroger branded bag of cheese and the Kraft branded bag of cheese is that where it says pull to open. If you do that on the Kraft, it opens. If you do that on the Kroger, you end up like this, saying, why won't this thing open? But there are always ways. Did I stick with the stock pickups? Yeah, I love this thing. I did stick with the stock pickups, kind of. Let me throw this away. I got some Fat Dianes from a company whose name escapes me, but you can find them in my reviews playlist. And I really like the sound of the pickups, and the pickups really are good. Manlius, that's what it is, Manlius. But the nickel covers he uses, and he's not the only one. The Stu Mac pickups use the same cover, and I've seen some other boutique builders using the same cover. Those covers have a weird hexagonal pattern to the chrome. Hexagonal, not hexagonal. And once you see it, it's like the Matrix. You know, I took the pill, and all I would see would be that weird honeycomb pattern that I don't get on the traditional nickel covers from Gibson or Throwback or etc. Bare knuckle, you know, the usual higher end suspects. And I told Mr. Manlius that his pickup's great, but he really needs to find a better source for his covers. And I'm sure it's a matter of small company, limited resources, and that most people probably order his pickups without a pickup cover. But I like covered PAF style. So I still have those pickups, and I might put them back in this guitar or another guitar at some point, but I'd have to get some higher quality nickel covers for them. And I used to have a double boiler kind of setup with beeswax in it for doing potting, pickup potting, and that thing died. I need to get another one. In just a second, I forgot that I need to use a capo on this guitar to string it. I haven't strung it in a short while, hot minute. So anyway, I really like those Manlius pickups, but I did not like those covers. And so these are the stock pickups that come with this 62, but I did change the bridge magnet to a Throwback. And I think I went from the stock A5 to the Throwback A2, and I've been very happy with it. It just slightly warmed it up a bit. And other than that, these things sound great, which you'll get to hear if I ever finish getting these restrung. But yeah, I like the SG an awful lot. Hey, CG Productions, see the comments today on that 65 Deluxe Reverb video from yesterday, where I can't remember his name. He's a longtime commenter, knows his stuff. He's been a tech for a long time. Talked about the ratings of capacitors and what they actually measure versus what it says on the body. And then a comment I made before that explaining to people that capacitors have a plus minus 20 tolerance, and that in most cases you won't hear a difference between a 16 microfarad and a 22 microfarad in the same amp, unless all the 16s are at the 20% low end of their tolerance and all the 22s are the 20% high range of their tolerance. Otherwise, that 16 might be an 18 and that 22 might be a 19, and you're just not going to hear that difference. A lot of capacitor filter stage values are, hey, this would be pretty good. This would be the right place to be. Anything close to that would work. Anything a little bit higher than that will work. It's really not critical. And a lot of designs, no one says, okay, I have calculated that I need to have 27.4 microfarads for this stage. They're going to say, all right, 27, I'll grab a 30 because that works. Or a 22 will work in a pinch. And there are a lot of amps out there that have 8 and 10 microfarad stages because they use the cheapest multi-section can caps that were on the market at the time. And a lot of those were dual 10s and dual 8s. And so that's what a lot of companies used, even though a 22 would sound better in that spot. Where am I at? So there are things that matter for feel in terms of the circuit layout, and you don't want to have too much capacitance on certain tube rectifiers. And you can make an amp too filtered. It can be over-filtered, but an over-filtered amp is not going from 8 to 10 or from going from 16 to 22. It's from saying, all right, original filtering on this twin was 35, and I'm going to make it 110. And then you do that in 2 stages, all of a sudden the thing feels awful. Let's see, where were we? Fret butter. Well, maybe next time I get some stuff, I'll try some fret butter. I'm not sure, Sonny, if there is a person who would have those faceplates for sale. Might be someone on Reverb who makes them. Check there, that's what I would do. But I don't have a source, sorry. Hey, Michael Bruce, got a Marshall's 2204 from 78, just like the one I have on my bench right now. Well, actually, the one on my bench right now is the 65 Deluxe. The 2204 is right there on the other side of this acoustic. Wonder if I might be able to go through and show voltages and go through the resistors for drift. Cool, fun to compare. Well, I will be talking about the voltages in the next video, and maybe I'll go through and measure all the components on screen for those. Actually, that would be a good thing to do because there's not a lot of documentation of various Marshalls from this period. It's like the 67 through 69 stuff. People, their entire forums just for that. You think I'm kidding? You might think I'm kidding. I'm not. But the late 70s stuff, there's a lot of mystery to that period. I've noticed on forums and people talking about Marshalls. Just differences like, just a second, old eyes, small hole. That's what she said. Come on, go through. You know you want to. Like the 680 versus 100 nanofarad presence cap. I've seen a lot of misinformation about that on forums. Let's see. This G7 thing, not my favorite capo by far, but it really is nice for restringing Maestros and Bigsby's because you can just stick it on there and not think about it. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to do a lot of things at once. So yeah, I'll be doing that. Yeah, I took all the strings off at once. It's my guitar and it's going to do what I want. Hey, Michael Fioca. Well, the thing is, you want the center tap, the resistors in an artificial center tap, you want them to fuse if necessary. You want them to be the weakest link. So if something goes wrong, one or both of those will burn open, and then you won't have any damage to your power transformer. So you would think that, you initially would think that 1 watts or higher would be great, maybe 2 watts. In practice, half watt is better because under normal operation, they will never fail. It's the abnormal operation that they're there to protect against. So you can buy fusible resistors if you want to pay more money for that privilege, but there's no real need to because they'll fuse themselves just fine if they're mounted up in the air. Even if you just use regular ones, you don't have to use flameproof. If they get toasty, they're not going to burn anything next to them. Drop the string a second. I get why D'Addario packages these things EA and GB and Sorry, DG and BE. I understand it, but I sure wish that was how they package them for fenders, and that they would do a separate thing for 3 on a side headstocks, because I always end up having odd pairings of things. Let's see. I guess that doesn't make any sense outside my head. Oh, Bigsby on a Wiltshire. That'll work just fine, Peter. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, Ike Stoddard. Kind regards back at you from Memphis. Hey, Jorge. Silver phase twin reverb. Let's see, just one second. With the original power cable and plug, ground switch, and middle death cap still there. Yeah. Just a second. We get the string started. All right, should I update power wiring? Yeah. How? I have shown that in literally every vintage Fender video in the last several years, pretty much. It's in my Vintage Fenders playlist. I just showed it on that 64 Deluxe Reverb video a couple days ago. Not the 65 from yesterday, but the 64 a few days ago. And it's easier for you to see it in those videos than for me to tell you again here. But basically, you're on the neutral to a primary. You're on the hot to the interconnector on the fuse holder to the switch to the other primary. And if you want to use the courtesy outlet as a terminal block, you can. Just make sure your hot and neutral match on the back of that thing. The larger opening on that courtesy outlet is the one for the neutral. Observe that. And get rid of that polarity cap, the death cap. You do not need it. You do not want it. It's just one more thing to fail at that point. Let's see. Chasing hiss from V4B in a 64 Deluxe Reverb. Gotcha. Isolate to the socket itself. Remove the grid wire and grounding. The grid with a 220K does not kill the hiss, but directly grounding the grid does. Well, the first way I would do it is I would spray deoxit in each individual opening of that socket, and I take a spare 12AX7 or whatever I had lying around, and I put it in and out a few times to let that kind of move the deoxit up and down and kind of rub the metal against metal. And then I would flush out the deoxit with isopropyl alcohol, and then I'd use a little bit of paper towel stuffed in there to wick out the excess when the cabinet is inverted, so the socket's facing down, so it'll drain out of there. And then let it sit for like 30 minutes to really dry out, and then see if the noise goes away. Sometimes you'll just have a bad socket, which is fun. In which case, the Beltons are about the best one on the market for old Fenders. And let's see. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that the problem does not mean that the problem is in the tube socket. Let's see. I think you're left with pretty much the tube socket at that point. Yeah. Let me know how that goes, John. That's a tricky one. Looking at old red knob, the twin, are they as bad as they say? Should I run? Yeah, they're horrible things. Terrible design. There's nothing about that amp has anything to do with the twin reverb. A dark period of Fender's design history. Let's use jacks that no one else uses. Let's use optocouplers that only Mesa uses, and they'll fail for us just like they do for Mesas. Really flimsy construction. Same heat issues that you find in the Hot Rod DeVille. The 94 and the red knob twin are where the Hot Rod DeVille's stunningly stupid low voltage supply was derived from, so they like to burn themselves up. They've got a useless ground loop. They got a useless effects loop. They do have ground issues as well. Very noisy overall, and one of the worst of the worst 80s high gain channels ever. You'd better off at that period buying a Galen Kruger ML 250 than using a red knob twin for high gain stuff. Now, someone's going to argue with that and say that they've got one, they love it, and it's always been fantastic. These people are wrong. That's the technical term for it. Said the guy who has brought back red knob and 94 evil twins to life and has dealt with all the issues and has actually worked on and played hundreds of vintage twins from 63 through 80, as well as all the reissues. So, everyone's got opinions, but not all opinions are valid. I'm not saying mine are the only valid opinions, but all the valid opinions out there line up precisely with mine on this subject. It's a bad design, and Fender didn't stay with it but for a year or two. And they realized after a point, and they came out with the reissue series, the 65 reissue series, which was their saving grace because they hadn't had a good amp since 1981 before that. So yeah, run. But if you buy one, you won't run ever again because it's too heavy to run with, too heavy to even walk with. I don't play around with other people's mods, Timothy. So I've never messed around with the Legendary Tones Hot Mod or Mr. Scary Mod. I would never want anyone to sound like Dokken. But if they insisted on sounding like Dokken, I'd listen to the actual Dokken records. And then I'd either advise them to let me do the following changes to their amp or to buy a different amp to begin with if you're chasing a particular tone that really only exists in mastering. But no, I don't pay attention to other people's mods. I don't need to. Mods is mods, and there are good ones and there are bad ones, but they're all, triodes behave certain ways. And there are only so many variables involved. And you want to do the Jose thing and add some diode clipping, that's fine. We can do that. But I don't need to look in a book and copy, a book. I'm dating myself. I don't need to look in some forum post at some hand-drawn thing based on what they saw one time. I'll just do it. I'll make the triodes do what I want them to do. And that's not me being big-headed. Dave Friedman could say the same thing. Brad, if he's awake and he's here, can say the same thing. People make things sound much more complicated than they are. This stuff is pretty simple stuff, really. We're not, none of it is rocket science. I mean that quite seriously. Hey, Victor, your Jimino came in. Good. That's a fantastic amp. Yeah, it's loud for a bedroom. When I get the string change finished, when I played earlier and I'll play again, this deluxe reverb right here is only on 2. And the cab's over there about 8 feet to my right. So about 10, 12 feet to the off-axis SM57. It'll still sound just fine in this context. But yeah, even at 2, it's very noticeably audible. All right, Sonny, if you have the John Mayer income, you can use the John Mayer anything you want. Just remember that John Mayer has more money than you really can imagine, and that his watches on any given night cost more than all his amps. He has watches worth $250,000, and some cost more. So if he wants a Dumble, Fender, and a Two-Rock, that's less, that's less than his wristwatch. I'm not quite sure how he's made all this money, because I've certainly never bought one of his records, but I'm obviously in the minority here. So don't worry about what John Mayer plays through. What Watch how he plays and his technique, because you can do that into a deluxe reverb. And if he were here and he were to pick up this guitar after I finished tuning it and plug into this 65 deluxe reverb, you'd all want to sound just like that, and all of a sudden these SGs would sell out. You know, I'd rather take a lesson from Derek Trucks, but you know, any tool which is good enough to get out of the musician's way is the right tool. And this deluxe reverb certainly counts just as much as a Dumble or a two rock. So don't worry too much about what the lifestyle of the rich and famous is. But when one of them really plays well, look at what their hands are doing and what note choices they're making. On that note, I'm going to pause here, stretch my legs, take a 7-minute intermission, and I'll catch you guys back in 7 minutes. All right, we back. Time to tune this thing up. In the meantime, where were we? And hey, Timothy Ortil, I saw your post when I was after this. You didn't offend me, and I hope I didn't offend you. But I just can't keep up with other people's mods. I know how to make the things do the things, and I just do it my own way. And so far, everyone's been very pleased with it, and they've lasted, and nothing's been tack soldered. And Sonny, I'm not coming down on you for wanting the John Mayer kind of setup. Just people can go crazy trying to buy tone. All right, cool one here. Tall man, skinny lady, recommend some cool new artists from Memphis people should know about. Also, what's the best kept secret Memphis artist we should all know, but sadly don't. All right, well, I am not the most up on who all's new and fresh out there on the scene because I don't go out very often anymore. But one that I always love hearing live is Marcella Seaman, S-I-M-I-E-N, Marcella, and her band name is Marcella and Her Lovers, and I've had a lot of friends who've played guitar with her, and she is phenomenal. Her music is so sexy, and I mean that in the real way, the real essential way. Her dad was still is a very well-known Zydeco player. And she comes from New Orleans and has lived in Memphis and has just incorporated all these aspects of funk and Zydeco and folk and blues. And it's just such a great energy. And it's just authentic and real, and I think is just phenomenal. As far as best kept secret Memphis artists you should all know, I don't know because I don't know who all you know and who you don't. I know an awful lot of people don't know Big Star, though they should. An awful lot of people don't know these days Booker T and the MGs, though they should. And the Hodge brothers doing all the backing tracks for Royal Studios and High Records and Al Green, all that's phenomenal. And Peebles, in terms of the songwriting, so many greats. So I don't know what you know, but if you've not heard Big Star, you need Big Star. If you don't know Booker T and the MGs, if you don't know the rhythms, the High Records rhythm section, Robert, what's his name? Robert Cray, great blues guitarist, did an album maybe 5-10 years ago with those guys while they were all alive. Some of them have passed since then. And it's just phenomenal. And Alex Chilton, of course, comes from Big Star. And if you're a Replacements fan, you know the name Alex Chilton. If you may not know Alex Chilton's work himself. Let's see where we're at. Helps if I plug it in before I try to tune it. And I'm using a Polytune, and it has a strobe mode that I will use later to double check the intonation perfectly. But for our purposes right now, I'm using it in the needle mode because the strobe mode takes longer. Well, it takes me longer at least, especially if we're getting up there. Yeah, so look for that album Robert Cray did. I don't have the record handy in my head, the title, but he did that with the rhythm section that used to back Al Green, and it's just phenomenal. I think they might have had Steve Jordan playing drums on it. He's okay too, even if he's not from around here. And tuning SG with the Maestro is a lot like tuning a Strat. It's not a set and forget thing like a Tele or 335 can be. You get one in tune, and it brings the others down as the whole thing flexes. We get to a certain point, I'll take another question, then we'll revisit this, and eventually we'll sneak up on it actually holding tune. Hey, Lenny's Brown Tooth. I've noticed that some mid-70s Marshalls have turrets on one end of the ST1 where various wires connected, others do not have the turrets. I've seen both. That's typically for when they used power transformers that can be wired for multiple countries' voltages, 120, 110, 240, etc. And so whichever wires were not being used, pardon me, for that particular model, the US model or the UK model, were tied to that board. And some of the boards don't use those, but they still have those holes. And I've used those holes to mount little terminal strips to do some elevated DC tricks. Hey, Robot Songs, thanks very much. Appreciate that. I will not hit you because you're not physically close to me. Any impressions, danger zones, or suggested mods on a Pignose 60VR? Picked one up super cheap for the throw-around amp, given its connection to Dennis Kagan. Well, an entire generation was lied to on multiple fronts. First of all, we thought we could go to a pawn shop in the Mississippi Delta and find a 58 Telecaster worth whatever Japanese watch was worth. Second of all, that you could sound really good and magically have reverb with a Pignose. Pignoses is what they is, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, change your battery. If it still doesn't work, its time might have passed. It was never going to sound great. Yeah, some hardcore Zappa guys chase that tone, but it is not the only way to get there. I wouldn't throw too much money into one. It's pretty much a transistor radio with an input jack and a speaker. So please don't hit me for saying that. Hey, Houston Row, how's the Princeton barn find going? I saw the last video. Looking great, thanks. Well, the new cabinet arrived with the aged grill cloth and the hardware, and I've ordered the speakers, so maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, hopefully, because the owner's going to be coming in Thursday to drop off 2 tellies to have some better pots put into them, and maybe he'll be going home with that and his new telly and his rewired tellies. So I expect the final thing will be Thursday, and maybe I'll be able to test his 2 really nice Telecasters with the new wiring through that amp. Speaking of which, it's always so hard to balance the neck pickup to the bridge pickup on different amps. I've definitely, on the Fender, I've got the bridge too high or the neck too low. I imagine the bridge is a little bit too high. I was last putting this into a Vox or Marshall, and that it was just killing it on that. All right, just by ear. I'm not getting that fluctuation as I press harder. I mean, if I really try. But I have to really try as opposed to accidentally. Now, I do an odd thing to test intonation on a guitar. I just heard a pop as the vibrola, one of the ball ends settled in, and the issue of string tension and tuning stability as you fret harder. I'll often use a capo just to see how bad things are, because you can have a guitar that plays fine as far as doing the 12th fret harmonic versus the 12th fret. Let's see how this does. Where is it? Oh, I know why I'm at the fourth fret. I was thinking third. Sometimes if I'm playing a song and it's not in tune. Why am I not getting the notes I expect? Did something really slip? All right, so the low E string went a little bit out. I find that the capo, if it just mangles all the strings or things go sideways, something else is wrong with the setup. There it is. I can't think about playing acoustic tunes on electric. It's weird. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. In general, for capo and electric guitars, I would want my tech to hand me one already set up and dialed in for the capo, because changing on electrics is a tricky thing, just because the strings do deflect much more than on acoustic, which is a problem that I was having with the nines, but these seem much better in that regard. Let's see. Still a lot more stretching to do, these things, of course. I won't even try the bar until after I've gotten some lubrication going on here and there at the nut and at where the ball ends contact the bridge. All right, back to questions. Let's see. Have I thought about selling mod kits? No, Rob, because I know that if I sold mod kits, there'd be people who wanted to install them and would but then they would mess them up, and then they would contact me all the time, either wanting me to hold their hands through it or complaining that my mods don't work when it's user error. And I am not constitutionally built for that kind of customer support, so I think it's a bad idea. I would, and any tech who's capable of doing this stuff, I think. Most of my mods are not that high tech, and there are a couple of techs I know who are really good, and I have shared my mods with them. But in terms of a kit that the average person can do, I don't think the average person has any business installing any kit in any amp, because I've seen what happens. I cannot help you with a Maestro FZ1, buddy, with an H. Sorry. I'd have to have the amp in front of me myself. I don't know the circuit well enough to extrapolate. Sorry. Yeah, we like to have a good time on here. It's in generally about amps, but it's Saturday. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. Join my Patreon for a mod kit. Well, I really think that if you watch some of the videos, aside from a very few subjects, like some of the stuff I do on some of the Vox models, most of the stuff I do on the Fender Reissue series, for instance, I'm showing you everything in those videos. And if you're ready to work on an amp, you can see everything I've done and why, and just do that. But and I've shown how to order parts in some other videos. Saw a thread on using the Stokes mod for increasing the headroom. It's one of the ways to do it, and I know John, and I've done things like that. You can do that kind of thing. You can give a plate reference an elevated plate reference. You can do local negative feedback. You can get all kinds of stuff, and you can just move the phase inverter to a higher B plus node. And I have done all those things and some variations on them, and I find that simple is good. And John's mod is not much different from what I do moving to a different node. Though I take note that as the plate voltage increases on the phase inverter, I don't keep the 68K. I'm sorry, the 56Ks at that point. I go to a 68K to keep the behavior that I want out of a Princeton while the plate voltage increases. So it lets me take more advantage of the plate voltage. So yeah, I'm aware of the Stokes mod, and it's good. I like my mod better, and he's fine to say the same thing, because his is quite good. Hey Jason, I didn't know you're in Hernando. Maybe we'll go down there, grab a burger and a shake together at the Velvet Cream. Hey, Meryl says, if I ever want a Germino Club 40 show off on the channel to show up a top-of-the-line boutique build, call him. I've had some Germinos on the channel. Not too long ago, I had his JTM 45 copy come in, and the owner wanted it to sound different, and I showed why it wasn't sounding the way he expected it to sound, what his expectations should be, because a lot of people have never played a JTM 45, and how well the Germino is built. Yeah, bring yours up here sometime. We'll go through it. It'd be fun. But, Greg's amps are great. I have worked on PV Classic 20s, many of them. It's a really good sounding amp. So is the 30, so is the Delta 30, so is the Classic 50. The trouble is longevity, because the way they were built has some issues, and they have some very specialized parts that PV used that we can't always get these days. Ooh, that's sour. Let's see. Goody Guitars just got 2 sets of new old stock Cream Go to knockoffs off tomorrow's. Yeah, it was cool. Matt Johnson, I have worked on Jim Kelly amps, but it's been a long time. And my memory of it is that it was really well built and really heavy, but I don't have much of a memory of it beyond that. Let's see. Pastor, a question about lowering B plus voltages using Zener diodes between the HT center tap and ground. Any drawbacks except for lower B plus overall? The method would not affect the heater or bias tap voltages. It wouldn't affect the heater or bias voltages unless the bias is implemented very strangely. But you're just going to generate an awful lot of heat with a Zener. It's been done an awful lot in a lot of amps, but you've got to use a great big chassis mounted diode, and it's not particularly efficient, though it does have the advantage of not restricting current the way we associate with a resistor doing it. Someone else was asking about that Deluxe Reverb where I said the max unloaded B plus is 485 and the caps are rated for 475, which is almost a purely theoretical problem, but I wanted to point out those kinds of considerations that techs have to look at before they sign off on something, if they're watching out for their customers. But someone had mentioned, well, just do a voltage divider. Well, that generates a ton of heat to do a voltage divider with resistors, and then as you play harder, it compresses more. And there are ways around it. You can also just you can put some resistors in series with the HT secondaries before the rectification, and if you play your cards right, you don't get much sag, and it's fairly constant. and it does decrease the B plus as well without as much heat as the diode dropper does. But better, if you really need to do it, is to use a MOSFET dropper, which is a MOSFET is much more efficient and will generate a lot less heat than a Zener. Kind of like fixed power scaling, non-adjustable power scaling. You set it to say, hey, I need to bring this down so the B plus goes from 520 to 480, whatever you want to do, and that's where it is, and it just lives there. So if you want to know more about that, R.G. Smith, not R.G. Smith, R.G. Keene. Why can't I think today? R.G. Keene put up some articles called the MOSFET Follies. 20 years ago now, and that really shows how to do that at a pretty good level. It's much more efficient and much less expensive, with fewer drawbacks than the old big Zener thing. Nice, Wes. I love SGs. Let's see. Getting to the next question. I think I'm where I was at the last break. Yeah, Mad Cow. I'm not sure it's a mess, but they sure were all over the place. Like that 75 at a B plus at 330. And I expect the 78's probably going to be 380 to 420, but I haven't found out yet. I did the initial test power up just to make sure the filter caps were okay with the current limiter. And yeah, as Mad Cow knows, but I'm just saying for the rest of the class, when you use a current limiter, you get an artificially low B plus because all your voltages are artificially low, about like up to 50 volts. Not 50 volts on the like the heaters and stuff. 50 volts on the 40, 50 volts on the B plus is not atypical. But I'd rather power it up with that protection and not hear what the amp really sounds like than to fire the damn thing up and then have $80 worth of damage occur on my bench in front of me. T777 likes the NYXL balance tension. It says worth the extra money. How wrong can one person be? I guess how wrong can two people be? All right, Mile High Effects. It's a TDK. All right, Versatile. The only thing connecting the initial terminal. All right. Yeah, it must be for spikes that probably aren't going to be an issue, but if it's working, nothing wrong with a little good old-fashioned overkill. Let's see. If I had to choose one single channel amp that can go from clean to overdriven with just the volume control on a guitar and is really touch-sensitive picking strength, which would it be? Just one? Come on, George. That's not fun. The three contenders. Vox AC15. And I would build like a 62 version, which is what my Excalibur, if I can ever get off the ground, is. Or second choice would be the modern AC15 or AC30. Two would be a 5A3 Deluxe. Three would be a 70s Marshall of some sort, probably a very early 2204, or maybe an 87 without the bright cap. Those are both really nice sounding amps. Four would be a Deluxe Reverb. Here's the Deluxe Reverb on two, and then overdrive pedals exist, but if I were to set up the mic, the real mic, as opposed to just letting you hear what's in the room, let me turn the level up on this pedal a little bit more. then I could do that just with the amp itself. A deluxe reverb with an SG will do those sounds, and you just control it with your volume. But for practice. And then it's clean again. I turned the level of the pedal up too much. The amp was getting a little squishy. Anyway, I'm not going to play around with getting the level set, but I have the level on the pedal set for a deluxe reverb on 4, and right now I'm playing the deluxe reverb on 2, so everything's a bit off. Nice guitar now. So much nicer when I can play it in tune and have it stay in tune. Let's see. But yeah, it's a great question. And if you can't get there with a good Marshall or a 5E3 or a really good Vox, it's not the amp. Let's see, Emerald Isle, Emerald Exile, getting service on a 60s Harmony H430. Those are pretty cool little funky things. They're stored in an attic for 40 years. It plays well, looks good inside. Besides the paper caps, would I change the can caps even if they test okay? Yeah, they're not going to test okay. Capacitors have a lifespan of about 20 years, 25 if you're really lucky. And it's been 60 years since the 60s, not 40 years. And that was a cheap can cap put in that Harmony to begin with. Change it out. Everything you like about that amp will still be there. It'll just be mo better and won't blow up on you and catch on fire. Hey, Daniel Mincher, a 5E3 is a Fender Tweed Deluxe made from 57-ish through 60. And it's one of my favorite amps of all time. If you look back, it's in the other room right now, but the review videos I did on the K-Line Springfield, the second one of those two, it's in my Gear Reviews playlist, had John Whittemore playing, and he was using his 59 5E3 that I restored and a 65 Princeton that I restored. And then in the first video, you got to hear the damn guitar through a 65 or 66 Super Reverb that I restored. So those two videos give a pretty good overview of different sounds that guitar can make straight into an amp. I've got modeling stuff, and people want all kinds of gear and talk about bedroom amps. This is a deluxe reverb on 2, with an overdrive pedal. And for practice, what else do you need? Except for a little bit more stretch for those strings. Let's see, where were we? So yeah, I would definitely change those caps. Yeah, he's D2P. Yeah, I think I answered this already. Yeah, the clean channel in the Classic 20 and the other Classic series are really good. Just sadly, they had about a 40-year lifespan, and they're past that. And so when they fail, things can go sour. Hey, Emmett Otter. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. You got a 99 HD 28. Yeah, it'd get along real, and you got the V too. So yeah, it would get along real well with my Eastman, unless you had sibling rivalry. Yeah, you have to go to it. I understand what you're feeling, what you're describing. These guitars play pretty easily. The Gibson has As the top of the guitar has bellied up, the bridge has risen a little bit. I went back and checked those numbers that Brad asked about. If he gets in here, I'll talk to him about it. And that entire face of the guitar has come up a bit, so the action's a bit higher than it used to be, and it's kind of affecting the intonation a little bit. But the Eastman is just perfect, and it's so easy to play. But my right hand, I'm still working on nuances. It's tricky. You do have to work on pulling the sound out as opposed to just splatting it out. I've been playing too much electric lately, and all my habits are bad ones for acoustic. Hey, Brian Camps. Oh, you got an F50. Good luck. Yeah, you got to replace the 175s. Yeah, well, any other maintenance while you're in there? Any Mesa, I replace tantalums on site. Small value bypass caps on cathodes typically, and the small ones I use a film cap. For any larger caps, larger values, I use electrolytic because those tantalums fail, and when they fail, they can burn, and then you can have more problems than just a bad cap. I would keep an eye on any 400 volt rated orange drops in the amp and measure the voltage which is present. Oftentimes they're at the bleeding edge, or they exceed that. Like the phase inverter, when the amp comes on, it can be like 300 volts or more, 400 volts, and you got a 400 volt cap. Well, we'll say you get 350 volts there when the amp first comes on, but the bias is negative 60. So all of a sudden, you're over 400 volts. Over time, those caps fail. So I'm a big fan of changing out the 400 volt for 630. And sometimes because of real estate in a Mesa, it's better to go with the smaller bodied Panasonic 630 volt caps than the very large orange drop 630 volt caps. And the other big thing on Mesas is they use an awful lot of 1 and 2 watt carbon composite resistors, which are terrible choices for the droppers and the power supply that they use them as, and as the screen grid resistors. So you'll see me often put metal oxides and wire wounds in their place, and there's no negative effect on the sound. But when the amp continues to work day after day after week after year, it's a nice feeling. Changing dropper resistor values to affect headroom in different stages fed by the B+. Can you get meaningful differences and feel this way? Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned in the video on the 78 Marshall 2 days ago, some of those Marshalls had 2 10Ks in series for the dropper stage between between the screen and the phase inverter. And other Marshalls only populated that with 1 10K. And you have a much higher headroom to the phase inverter and to the entire preamp. And these are things that matter. Look at the 70s twin with a, not twin, but deluxe reverb with a 2.2 or 2.2 or 2.7K and 10K instead of 2 10Ks. Those 70s amps are trying to get more headroom in the preamp. Hey, Andy Talmantes, you found them to be more require more stretch to bend to a pitch. I don't find that to be the case. I find them easier to bend. I find that once you get them stretched and in tune, they stay in tune better for me than regular XLs. And they seem to have a little less tension, which is nice, but not floppy. Of course, I'm on a Maestro-equipped SG, not the best one for those double stops, but I like them, and they seem to last a bit longer, which is good because I got like 8 electrics in rotation for the channel. I don't like changing strings all that much. But even if I had coated strings, I'd still have to change them after a while because I wear them out physically. It's not a matter of corrosion. It's a matter of they get indentations. So if the NYs aren't worth it to you, they're not worth it to you. Or maybe you're just used to the feel of the XLs. I tried to like the XS on the D'Addario acoustics, and I could not make peace with it. So since last Saturday's stream, I've changed them to the XTs, and I like them a lot more because they feel like guitar strings to me. Maybe that's what it is for you. These do feel slinkier than regular XLs, but not that coated, slimy feel. Unless you like the coated, slimy feel. Hey, Ron Allen, preset 1. He's got some distortion that kind of sounds like tearing on his Princeton reverb. When the gain is above 5, sounds like it is mostly in the low frequencies. Any tip on where I should look? All right, you are probably running into good old blocking distortion, which is also called, wait for it guys, nipple distortion, and some grid clamping on the paraphase phase inverter, which is very common. It's what's in the Deluxe reverb. I'm sorry, can't talk. It's what's in the Princeton reverb. It's also what's in the 5E3. But it causes that kind of symptom very commonly. And if you go to the valvewizard.co.uk and look at his section on cathode phase inverters, and I've mentioned that earlier in the stream, he shows some very simple ways to eliminate that problem in the cathode phase inverter, and it works very easily. There are things you can do above and beyond that, like moving the B plus node, but the first things to look at are what he's talking about in terms of lowering the input grid leak resistor value, adding additional current limiting resistor on the grid. It makes sense, but he's got a whole article on it. Try that stuff because that's probably what you're getting. Everyone experiences that. Everyone has a different description for that, but that sounds like what you're talking about. Hey, Wes, got an amp where the output transformer measures 20% different DC resistance and voltage drop. Power tubes are biased cold, but not well balanced. So your DC resistance was different and your voltage drop was different. Don't worry about it too much. 20% DC resistance and voltage drop is within the margin of errors because it is a physical whine like a pickup, and it's really hard to get the same number of whines on each coil. And most transformers don't even bother to get the same number of whines on each coil because they're kind of self-balancing to an extent. And it may be that one of them is wound a small, tight coil, the other one's going around the whole thing. Anyway, unless it's really, really out, it's not usually an issue. You can usually have tubes which bias fine, even if that's not the case, because the tube has the most influence on the behavior and the bias. But the quick way to find out is to say, all right, I've got higher DCR here, a lower DCR here, and this is what my bias measures. Swap the tubes, and if the imbalance flips so that this one was 10% hotter, now it's 10% hotter or colder, whatever it is, I'm not making any sense. The tubes, when you flip the tubes, will tell you if the problem stays with the winding of the output transformer or if it follows the tube. So you may have not well-balanced tubes that would not balance well regardless of the output transformer. You may have an output transformer which would be absolutely fine with other tubes, but you may have a problem with the output transformer. Why even try to talk today? You may have a problem, but it's not as likely as you seem to think. I hope it's not the problem. Hey, Merrill. Well, the one big difference is your cabinet for the basement is closed back and mine's open back. In general, you should still be fine with what you heard with ET65. My pairing is actually an ET65 and a Veteran 30, which is their version of a Vintage 30, and it sounds great together in the room, but I prefer the mic'd sound of the ET65. So we'll talk some more, but I think the ET65, either as a 2x12 or the Veteran 30 ET65 combo would be the way to go. But the nice thing is I have a really good relationship with Warehouse. So if we get them and we don't like them for whatever reason, we can return them and try something else. So we will talk soon. Seth B., I apologize. Earlier I was mentioning your reply I think it was this morning on the 16 microfarad versus 22 microfarad concept, and how your reply was, of course, absolutely correct, and I agree with you. But I didn't remember your username. For some reason, I had you. Oh, or was it you, or was it Satchmo Eddie? I'm sorry. You and Satchmo Eddie tend to post similar things because you have a similar level of experience. So if it wasn't you, Seth, I apologize. If it was you, I apologize. But I read that this morning before I had my first full cup of coffee. So it's either you or Satchmo Eddie. Okay. Oh, you are Satchmo Eddie? Well, that would explain why you post similar things. I was today years old when I learned that. All right. Let's see. Alex DeLeon says when he worked at a cartage company, Pat Metheny and B.B. King requested Red Knob twins as a backup for Dumbles or Lab L5s. Well, that's probably what they'd had experience with. It doesn't mean that was the best possible option for them. A lot of guys request Hot Rod Deluxes because they know a cartage company has it and they can get some kind of useful sound out of it. Though it's amazing how many really great guitarists are actually kind of unaware of the gear that's out there in the world that they could be using. I guess they're too busy practicing to worry about how to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. But as good as they could have sounded through a Red Knob twin, imagine if they played through an actual real twin. Without the let's see. Oh, Surge98, no one can answer that question for you but you. The 100 watt and the 50 watt are going to sound different. They're going to feel different. And it's not just about volume. But as to which one you prefer, I can't tell you because that's like picking someone's girlfriend for them. The 50 watt has a great personality. The 100 watt's big boned. I don't know. $250,000 for a watch. Doesn't everyone? Well, no, some people only spend $350,000. Why a third is higher than a quarter. Wow. All right. And that's why I don't have $250,000 because I suck at math. Yeah, I don't use PVC coated wire if I can help it. It's yucky. Teflon is just a joy. Are the 2x12 Mojo Tone cabs modeled from any particular cabinet? Yeah, they've got models of all kinds, and they've got some original designs. But for not for Seth, I'm sorry, I'm seeing Seth's name right there. I can't talk. For Merrill's old basement, we ordered a basement cab, a big basement 2x12. So it's big, oversized, closed back 2x12 basement cab. Would have had Utahs in it back in the day. And if Merrill wants to go for the Utah sound, I think those Alessandros would be really damn close. Better, but in that mid-rangey, punchy direction. But given the sounds that he liked here, I think he'd probably be happier with the ET65 because it has a lot more low end. And he heard that in the room. He was here a couple weeks back, and he got to hear the Alessandro versus the ET65 versus the G12C in the room. If you saw those speaker comparison videos, and he got to fiddle on them a bit, and he liked the ET65's low end. Groovy, Seth. You got some pace going on there. Very cool. Hey, George Badea, got a super reverb issue. Planning to recap filter cap. Should I replace all the cathode bypass caps while I have it open up? Thank you very much, George. Appreciate that. 2004, I would do it now. If your amp came to me and it was 2 years old or 2 weeks old, I'd say we need to change out the filter caps because they tend to fail. I wouldn't worry about the cathode bypass caps at all. But 21 years, that's a good long run. So yeah, go ahead and change out the cathode bypass caps. They're pretty easy. Now, I'm trying to remember, I think they use axial on that, in which case use the same Vichy 63 volts that I mentioned earlier in the stream. Much better than the IC brand that Fender used. But the cathode bypass caps tend, and the ones in the bias board as well, tend to last a lot longer than the big filter caps because they have less voltage. So you want 10 microfarad 100 volt to 160 volt for the bias, and you want 22 microfarad 63 volt for all the other cathode bypass caps that are electrolytic, and you want all the same values as the stock filter caps, just get F&T or MOD instead of IC. Most I ever spent on a watch was a $300 Sunto. I will not tell you how much I've spent on a watch, but I'll just say that the one I'm wearing now is more than that, and I've got a lot more. I've got a problem. Not a $250,000 problem, but let's see. I admire John Mayer's talent. He's a really good player. I don't enjoy his music, and he has given some really appalling interviews in the past, which made me embarrassed for him. And hopefully, he's gotten better since then. But I've not followed him. I don't think he cares what I think, and that's fine. And vice versa. I wept when I saw the price tag on a pink Patek Philippe Sky Moon. Yeah, and remember that John Mayer's got some bespoke Patek Philippe's, custom one of one made for him with his name on them. So that's like the GDP of a small country. Or if things keep going, it'll be the GDP of this country. Analog watches, how to say you're old and or rich. I don't think that's true. I'm neither of those things, and I have many, many analog watches, but you caught me on a digital watch today. Well, it's a digital anti-watch. It's both, but it's primarily a quartz. But I've got a lot of nice analog watches, and I'm neither old nor rich. I've also got some G-Shocks and stuff. What I don't have is a stupid Apple Watch, because I don't want to be notified all the damn time. I don't want to be told about this, that, and that. I don't want to have phone calls. I'm not fucking Dick Tracy. I don't want to talk to my wrist. I just want to know what time it is and have something that looks cool. And Apple Watches do not. Houston Row, I've got the calculator watch. Maybe I'll put it on during the break and write hello and boobs and boobies and stuff. I do have the calculator watch, just for fun. It's the Marty McFly Back to the Future 2 one. Yeah, I rocked a lot of swatches too, Wes. I had many swatches with the swatch guard. I had the transparent one. I had the first transparent watch at White Station, middle high, in 8th grade. For a brief shining moment, I was cool. I don't understand the cult of Drake at all, but that's not my world. Nice, Alex. Cartier. I would never wear a Cartier. I'm just not a Cartier kind of guy, but I can admire the designs. I thought about getting a swatch out of nostalgia, but I know I would never wear it. It's just too small for me these days. All right, we're coming up now on the second hour, so we're going to take another 7-minute intermission, and I will... You still kind of want a Seiko dive watch. I've got so many Seiko dive watches. Wes, while I'm on the break, look up the SBJ 143. The SPB 143. That's That's my Seiko dive watch, but I'm not going to run and put it on right now. See you guys in another 7 minutes. Alrighty, a couple of things. First of all, I am wearing a Seiko dive watch. I'm wearing the Arnie, so it's analog digital. Looks like a dinner plate on most people, but like I said about playing the SG, I'm not a small person. And if you're ever being hunted by an alien in the Costa Rican jungle or need to get to do the choppa, this is a good choice. And I just had some shiny things on my wrist the past couple of streams. Like last week, I was wearing my Rolex clone. But Rolex is very much our dive watches, by the way. You can do anything in a Rolex Submariner. They're rated at 300 meters. They're tough as hell. They're just become a luxury thing. So instead of being equivalent of a $4,000 watch, they're now $12,000, which is just nuts. And they're about to go up because of the tariffs on Swiss-made stuff. But so I can't ever justify that. But that $1,200 watch I do have, Wes, I bought it used for $750. I would not pay $1,200 for that. That's too much for a Seiko. But $750 for what it is just perfect. And it's just a gorgeous thing. I don't wear it very much at the bench because I don't want to mess it up with exposure to big magnets. And I deal with a lot of big magnets here. Yeah, the watch would outlast me, Seth. I don't go more than, I think 3 meters is an Olympic dive pool. An Olympic pool. That's as deep as I've ever been. But I do like knowing that the watches I have can go, this one's 200 meters and it's solar powered, no battery. And I've got a G-Shock that's even tougher. And then I've got several dive watches which are rated for 200 meters and many 100-meter watches. And I've got some pretty dress watches rated for 30 meters, which means that if I splash them while washing my hands, life goes on. But I spend much more money on my guitars than I do on my watches. But I like having nice watches. Not fancy, expensive watches. Nice watches that are mechanically interesting to me or have some horological, historic connotations. Even if it's a G-Shock or the Marty McFly calculator watch or the Ani, the Arnold. I wears the Arnold. As little girly men can't. Let's see. Some musicians stick with needle mode too long. Thank you, Ted. Teenage Fan Club. I forgot about Teenage Fan Club. Yeah, they did a lot of Big Star. Let's see, some Big Star. Won't you tell your dad, get off my back? Tell him what we said about painted black. That's sotto voce, not real singing, but yeah, it's just beautiful stuff. Yeah, rest in peace, Duck Dunn. Yeah, Smoking Gun Stuck in Your Head, sorry. He had some other songs too, though the radio never found out about that. What brands of 6L6s do I find most reliable? Do my repairs. I'm currently using almost exclusively the Tungsol 6L6 GC STRs. They sound really nice. Emerald Isle, this is an old Southern Jumbo from $1999. I wasn't sure last week if it was 99 or 2000. Wouldn't it be better to... I'll get to your question about biasing an amp, Nicholas Broussard. I'll get there, I promise there. I think it's faster tuning high to low on trim guitars. Yeah, I usually do. Actually, I find that if I get the D and G tuned like E and A, and then bring the B and E up to like C and F, and then when I do the A and E, bring those up, everything gets much closer. But I was not focusing on that. I was trying to make words happen at the same time. James Cassidy's off to get his new 85 JCM 800. Very cool. Jeremy Cotta's got a twin 135. It's been sitting a long time, and he thought restoring and converting it to blackface. Don't convert it to blackface. It is a unique amplifier. Restoring it is a good idea, unless that's an amp that you would never play, in which case you sell it as is, and you don't make as much money on it, but you're not the one who has to pay to have it restored. There's not a lot that can go wrong with those amps long term. Any thoughts on mods for your non-master volume Silverface? 77, Rosewood Steel says. Well, if it's a non-master, the two things that I do, take out the bright cap on the master volume, because it's a terrible thing. Take out the bright cap on the master volume. It doesn't sound very good. And the 10 nanofarad input cap on the phase inverter should be changed to a 3 nanofarad or 3.3 nanofarad. Other than that, just restore it as it is. Let's see. But other than that, they're really nice apps. Well, I do think John Gooden. I do think Robert Cray can be a little bit polite. But that is actually a style of blues as well. And I think he is just one sharkskin suit away from being in his true milieu. Let's see. Gary Grasser got a tick after slowing the trims. I imagine that you had a slightly weak 10 nanofarad, 10 nanofarad cap, and changing it to a 20 nanofarad did slow the trim, but you had a stronger cap, so there's a stronger pulse to LFO. And the fix to a tick is to put a 10 nanofarad cap across the roach from the pin which is connected to the 10 meg resistor to the ground point on the other side. So just horizontally across the roach. That usually takes care of any ticking, and that's what is in the 65. And I took it out to see if it was necessary, and it was. I don't mess around with things like that. Probably won't hurt the amp though. So plug it in if you like it. You like it, but I don't think it's necessary. I've seen so many gimmicks come and go. I'm very jaundiced about such things. Yeah, I like the Keystones. I put the Keystones on here. They came on the SG, but I don't like the looks of Grovers. Let's see. How big should a 1-ohm bias resistor be for bias current? 1 or 2 watts. 1 is more than sufficient. 2 watts is mechanically a little bit stronger if you have any mechanical connection considerations. You don't want that to ever fail. That's not something that should be treated as a fuse. I mean, it won't hurt if it fuses, but just be an irritation if one were to die. Get a 1 watt or 2 watt. It's going to be non-affected by the current present, which means it's less likely to drift. Go ahead and get a metal oxide or a metal film 1%, so your measurement means something. Let's see. Let's see. Hey, Daniel Margolis. While using the vibrato on a 67 Deluxe reverb, the vibrato stopped working, though the regular stayed on. The next day, the vibrato worked again. Any thoughts? Thanks. Well, could be a problem in a foot switch. Could be a problem in a dirty contact on the RCA plug. Could be an intermittent tube in V5. I would have to be there. But if it stopped working, it depends on if you're using the foot switch for it. Foot switches and those things often have breaks inside the conductor inside breaks, because the the wire using those foot switch cables is terrible. And so it can work until it moves. And as soon as it moves, it stops working. It moves again, it works again. It's a very simple circuit, and they use the world's worst wire for it. And that's probably what you ran into, but I can't tell you for sure without having your amp here. Yeah, Gary Clark Jr. is fantastic. Can never get the hang of tuning with open harmonics. Well, I only use open harmonics really to tune the high E to the A. Beyond that, the trouble with tuning to harmonics is that you'll tune it perfectly, and a guitar should not be tuned perfectly. A guitar is a tempered instrument. And you can get into like Peterson tuners, which give you different sweetened tunings to take that into consideration, and you can find exactly how you want the guitar to be tuned. I tend to just tune to a tuner, a good tuner. I use the Polytune. I'll also be happy with the Peterson. And a lot of times just knowing how the guitar works, especially on acoustic, I will tune it, and then I'll retune the low E strings of my G. I've got a capo on, but pretend this is G, 3rd fret, is in tune. And then I know my low E is going to be a little bit flat, but actually at the time I pick it, it's going to rise in pitch, so it kind of comes up to where it should be. And our ear is much more forgiving of things which are slightly flat than things that are slightly sharp. And so I don't want the guitar to be perfectly in tune if I play, well, I would say a C chord, but I'm playing a D here because of the capo. I don't want to be perfectly in tune for that, but then be absolutely horrible if I play an F sharp 13. Well, in this case, this is G sharp 13. With guitar, you're always finding a useful compromise that will still work against a piano, which has its own compromise tuning. None of us, unless you're just going to play in one key and you never change at all from that, and you never have any accidentals, you always have to have some kind of compromise, unless you're playing violin or cello, where the human controls all that. Anything where you have a fixed note, be it a fretted instrument or a stringed instrument like a piano, there are tuning compromises. So the only thing I will do is I will get forgive the capo, a 7th fret harmonic on the A string, and make sure the top E is in tune with that. That really gets me a good place. I will usually do the 5th fret B string against the E, because that lets you know if there's an intonation issue with the guitar for whatever reason. You can balance that out. Then I don't want that 3rd to be too perfect there, so I will often do the 5th test between the A and the D. If that 5th is sweet, and then the next 5th is sweet, it's a little bit out, but I'm not going to mess with it right now, because you don't want to have that sour, too sharp major 3rd on an E shape. So I could do a chat just on this, but it'd be more fun if you guys could sit here with your guitars and cameras and mics. We could actually have a conversation about it. Enjoy Mom's pork chops, Merrill, and that sounds like a bad joke. We won't go there. Yeah. Well, Seth, you're one of the people who can read schematics. We're a dying breed, and a lot of times if you can read the schematic, you don't really need the schematic, because I can say, yeah, just I changed the plate to 130K, and that's all you need to hear. And you say, oh, I see why you did that. It's going to get a little bit more gain. Or I could have said I added a 10K on the plate and did the split with the added 10K in series of the plate and split off that junction to the coupling cap. I don't have to draw it all out. Maybe I need a book of your schematics. Yeah, Dumble changed his design an awful lot. I I really think he was both doing different things for different clients and always evolving, trying to find the best possible, which I can relate to. It's just unlike Dumble. I can't tell someone, I'm sorry, it's going to be 20 years before I finish your amp, and if you ask me about it again, I'm not going to give you your money back. Thank you very much, Steve Smith. I appreciate that. And I'll be seeing you very soon with your Tellys and your Saved 66 Princeton. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. See you, Magisterium. Hopefully I'll see you back. Why don't amp kit clones sound like the old amps or do that? It depends on who builds them. If I put together a Mojo Tone or TAD kit for you, it'll sound like an old one. If someone who has no business working on amps were to service an old one, it's not going to sound as good as other person's kit build. You know, I'm not saying that I'm the best. Seth B here could do the same thing. If Brad were here, he could do the same thing. A good tech can make any of the kit amps fantastic. If you look at if you watch 5 Watt World, he took a Mojo Tone Deluxe Reverb kit to Dan Lurie, who's a great tech up in his neck of the woods, up in the New York area, and they put it together in one day, and it's a great sounding deluxe reverb after that. Because Keith knew that while he could make it work, the difference between working and working really well is huge. So, yeah, I started off with the tuning fork, bong, ooh, and then you just tune from there. I'm capoed again, so anyway. But I also started off on violin, where that ear training is one of the first things you're taught. I just spend 2 weeks working on tuning the damn thing, because before you can make any sense of what to do your left hand, you need to be able to hear the open strings and what an interval is. In that case, they're all fifths. As opposed to the fourths we have. And at that 1/3. So you got to be able to hear a fourth. You got to be able to hear a third. And know when those are sounding good. But also know that, hey, sometimes if I make that perfect, it's only going to sound good in that one key. It's tricky. Yeah, one of the tricks you can do with a B plus in an amp is if it has a rectifier tube, is, say you go from a GZ34, which has got a nominal drop of 10 volts, to a 5U4GB, which has got to take it down 30 volts. And there's some other ones out there, the 5V4s and stuff. As long as the as long as the power transformer can supply the current and you don't have too much capacitance for certain rectifier tubes, which is not usually the case in a tube rectified amp, unless it says Mesa Boogie on the panel. You can do that a lot, because that will not affect the other voltages in the amp. What is the best shielding material for a Marshall style head cabinet? I'm about to show you something that's really good, but you can slice the heck out of yourself. At the hardware store, they sell this over in the roofing flashing section. It's very thin sheet aluminum, comes in larger sheets, and you will ruin a utility blade doing this. But take an X-Acto blade, a fresh one, put this on a cutting mat, use a straight edge, cut it to the size you want. You can just cut halfway through each cut with a utility blade, and then you've scored it, then you snap it, or you can do it again, but it will kill a blade, but blades are cheap. And you can cut it just like that. Then you can either staple it, or you can use some 3M spray contact cement, in which case I would tape off the places in the cabinet that I do not want there to be any spray, and I would tape off the last 1/8 inch around the perimeter of this, spray both those surfaces, and here's the hard thing. Make yourself wait 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the temperature. Don't do this when it's really cold or really humid. And let each one get tacky, and then put it in place, and you got like one shot, but once that's in place, that's going to be really rock solid. That is the best option. Second best option is probably to get some of that aluminum flashing tape that they sell, which overlaps itself, because if the chassis is touching all these pieces of tape, even if the tapes aren't bonded, each piece of tape won't electronically be connected to each other. They'll all connect where they contact the chassis, which is solid. That works really well. That's got Stickum on the back. The other option, which I've often done, is again with 3M spray adhesive. It doesn't have to be 3M. Weldwood's got one too, but a good spray adhesive and taping things off. Heavy-duty aluminum foil. The difference is the heavy-duty aluminum foil can be torn, like you find in the top of most Fender reissue amps these days. But that metal that I showed you won't tear, but it is a pain to work with and it's more expensive. But that's going to have the absolute best shielding option for you. Keep on keeping a guitar on my shoulder and playing on the stream. It's cool. All right, well, thanks, man. General speaking, what are my thoughts on a 1x12 open back cab versus small 1x12 closed back cab for bedroom playing? And pros and cons tonally. I find in general I prefer an open back cab because it's less focused and I can hear it from more places in the room, and it seems to spread around the room nicely because the sound is coming from a lot of places. It sounds really big. Closed back can be a bit boxy, and you have to be in front of it sometimes to really hear it, which might work in your favor in a small apartment complex. Though at the volumes you're going to be playing in an apartment, it's really not going to matter. As to which has more low end, it's going to depend on the design of the cabinet. A large open back cab is going to have more low end than a small closed back cab. But a large closed back cab can have much more low end than a fairly large open back cab. And you can also do port things, not just like the tile port thing, but you can do like just a big porthole like the Dumbles used to do. But I'm a bigger fan of open back in general. Now, on the Bassman that we ordered from Merrill, it's the closed back Bassman cab. But in the past, I've taken actual Bassman cabs from the 60s and made new rear panels. So instead of having 2 panels that close up, I'd have 3 panels, and the middle panel could be left out. So you can have a choice of open or closed. And I've always preferred the leaving that panel out myself. But then again, I also take out that, in an old 60s cab, I take out the center divider piece, and I take out all the stupid insulation that they stuffed in there. I'm not a big fan of the original Bassman cabs. They're too to me. But that is very subjective. Let's see, where was I? All right, we are still towards the beginning of the stream in terms of these comments. I may never get caught up. Pretty good smithereens tone there. Thanks, man. I don't think it sounded that good in the room because it was kind of mushing and a little bit dark, but the guitar is appropriate for that song. And now that the thing's in tune, it's much nicer. Thanks for the comment on the beautiful SG. I do love that guitar. Hey, Thanasis, Anagnostakis. Sorry. Wasn't ready for your name. No disrespect. That was just a bit of a tongue twister. If I said it more often, I get better at it. So stick around. I'll improve. What is a good brand when it comes to replacing the valves in a Fender Deluxe Reverb reissue? Thank you. Well, I don't go with a single brand typically when someone brings in a Deluxe Reverb. If it needs all new tubes, I will do the following. For rectifiers, if they're doing a GZ34, I will usually go with the JJ. Sometimes the Softtech's fine. If they're wanting to play around with a 5U4GB, I can get a new old stock Philips for about $40, which is much better than any current production 5U4GB. That's a joint Army Navy tube. For the output tubes, the 6V6s, I go with the Electro-Harmonic 6V6 GTs. For the 12AT7s, I go with joint Army Navy Philips 12AT7s. They're still available for about $35. For the V5 tremolo tube, which is not in the signal path, I'll just grab a JJ ECC 83. And for the three 7025s, I use Electro-Harmonics 7025s. Now, you could do most of that with Electro-Harmonics 7025s and Electro-Harmonics 12AT7s, and their 12AT7s are fine. And you probably get away with just an Electro-Harmonics 12AX7 for V5. So you could do all Electro-Harmonics. I wouldn't pay the money almost twice as much for Electro-Harmonics labeled GZ34 over the JJ because it's not any better. So Electro-Harmonics would almost be your one brand choice, but I rarely do that. Hey, Jamie Moore. Well, send me an email and I'll look for that. I'd be glad to. I just can't tell you when. I'm sorry. Hey, Mark. See my videos on both those amps. I've got tons of videos on both those amps. Anything to watch out for and avoid with the modern deluxe reverb? I've got videos called like tone and reliability upgrades for Fender reissues. Mostly it's the stuff that gets hot. It's the screen grids and the heater connections. I move those off the board. The amp itself is really good. It just needs some final assembly help, and tightening the hardware is almost always necessary on them. And the other thing to watch out for is that most of them ship with a C12K speaker, which just sounds like shit. Almost any other speaker in the world sounds better than a C12K in a deluxe reverb. As to the AC15, I'm specifically talking about the AC15 Custom Series. That's the C1 and the C1X. Not the Custom Classic, not the hand-wired, not the older TBX series. With the AC15 C1 and C1X, they're fantastic for jazz and funk. And they do rock tones, and they do country tones, and they do blues tones. They're just phenomenal amps. They're probably not as commonly used for jazz and funk as a deluxe reverb might be, but they're certainly more than capable of it. So I would advise you to play one and see what you think. Just know that the tone stack in the AC15 works very differently than the tone stack in a Fender. So you got to play around with it and really fiddle with it and see how they interact because it's easy to dial on a sound that sounds terrible, and you think that amp sounds terrible, this channel sounds terrible. Why do people like this? Because you've set the knobs as if it's a Fender or a Marshall. You really got to start with both of them at about 2 o'clock from the player's perspective. If you're behind the amp, and nudge one in one direction and then the other and play around with it. You'll get a feel for it, but it's really easy to sound terrible because the good stuff, it kind of hides. But once you find it, you can find it every time. Let's see. I don't think I said the 5E3 was paraphase. I'm pretty sure I said it was cathodione, but maybe I misspoke. I misspeak from time to time. Last week, someone asked the scale length of the guitars, and I said 24 3/4, and I said 25.9 on the Eastman, and it's 24.4. And of course I meant 24.4, but I said 24.9, and I didn't hear it at the time. And all week, that's been bugging me, man. It's been bugging me. I get so frustrated when I misspeak, but then I go and do it again, so I don't learn. Oh man, you're talking to the Adrian from Portishead. Yeah, Portishead and Vox and Radiohead and Vox. I mean, those are perfect choices. I need to figure out I haven't played Sour Times in 30 years, 20 years. I need to relearn that. Yeah, 5D3. I know 5C was paraphased. I don't remember if you say the 5D was also paraphased, then it was. I don't recall. It's been a while since I had a 5D. I like the Kurt Mangan's on acoustic, Wes, but I wear strings out on the electric so much that I don't need to spend more than the NYXLs, and they seem to last a bit longer than the regular XLs. So that to me, that little price difference is worth it. Hey Brett, how am I the K-Line Springfield getting along? Like peas and carrots. I just love that damn thing. I did not bring it in here for this video because I've used it in so many videos lately, and I just love that guitar. But you know, it's real easy to just. It's real easy to over saturate something, but it will be making regular and continued appearances because it's not going anywhere. Yeah. Vox is probably my favorite amp when they're working right. There's so many people make them work wrong, seemingly on purpose, because they think that's how it's supposed to be. It's crazy. Let's see. Hey, Kyle Gisbert. Swapping tubes in a single rectifier. Got your 606s waiting on the 12X7s. You can do them anytime, any order you want. There's no biasing involved in that amp, so change out the 6L6s, and then later, when the 12X7s arrive, change out the 12X7s. Just a matter of taking the rear cover off the amp. You know, no big deal. Won't hurt a thing. $38 and 43% is not really anything to worry about. You got a 5% difference there, Wes. Unless I hear a hum, I don't worry about any difference smaller than 10%. And even when it's 10%, if there's no hum, I don't worry about it. If there's no hum and neither one's red plating, it's close enough. Sometimes a little bit of mismatch does some magical things for harmonic series. So. We're not making hi-fis for turntables here, so you can relax some stuff. It either sounds good or it doesn't, as long as it's safe for you and for the amp and the tubes. Yeah, some people kill strings real fast. I tend not to kill strings with sweat. You know, if I'm playing outside in August, yeah, I have. But what happens is I tend to play harder than a lot of people, I guess. And oddly, I don't tend to dent my frets that much. I mean, this one, I'm looking at it, I'm probably 5 years away from needing a new fret job on this, or at least a good dressing. And I haven't had, these are the original frets on this 25-year-old guitar. I don't tend to damage the frets, but I put all kinds of dings in the bottom of the strings. This one, you know, these are new strings, they feel fine. The strings that were on that SJ, on the SG rather, this is the SJ, that's the SG, did not have weeks of playing on them. You know, they were on there for months, but they probably had a couple of days worth of playing, and the bottoms were all chewed up just from my left hand. I don't know. Any thoughts on Fender Pro Sonic amps? Yeah, avoid them if you can. It's well built, but they've got a really bad implementation of a bizarre reverb circuit that just puts a bunch of noise in the amp, and they have the same low voltage supply issues as the '94 Evil Twin and the Red Knob Twin and the Hot Rod DeVille, and they tend to catch on fire, and the filter caps tend to leak. You can have it serviced if you like the sound, and there are published fixes for the reverb noise, but I would never suggest anyone buy a Pro Sonic. And some of the Pro Sonics have an effects loop that's incredibly noisy, and it's best just to bypass that entirely because the fix for it is much more money than the amp is worth. I would not say it's built well. I might have said that at the beginning of this because I was being nice, but I don't want to go on record as saying the Prosonic is built well. It's not. Yay! Fantastic. So your parents went to Pastéis de Belém. Yeah, that is the single best pastry I've ever had in my life. And as an overweight guy who cooks, you know what I'm talking. I know what I'm talking about. When I travel, I try all the goodies, including all the goodies I don't allow myself to have very often at home, because I'd be go from overweight to morbidly obese in a very happy fashion. But yeah, if I'm within 4 hours of Lisbon ever again, I'm going to get on a train or whatever I have to do just to go have some. And they probably will have to kick me out at the end of the day because I'll just keep ordering and eating as long as possible. If you are anywhere in the Lisbon or Belém area, go to Pastéis de Belém and eat as many as you can, and take a picture and send it to me of you looking like that guy from Meaning of Life where they need to fetch him a bucket, Mr. Creosote, and I'll be jealous as possible. I'm glad your parents enjoyed it, Green Mystic Server. Let's see. My thoughts on ported cabinets. It depends on the design. Some are great, some are terrible. It's very easy to make it to have something that works on paper and sound terrible in real life. Cabinet acoustics are really complicated. So, but yeah, they can be fantastic. Yeah, Christopher, we're in Arnie today. Let's see. Where we were. Yeah, Seth. If you watch Brad's videos, he had a wooden watch, and he was banging into chassis and stuff. And Michelle had gotten them that for like their wedding or for their engagement. I sent him a G-Shock, and that's what he wears all the time. And I wear the G-Shock mostly now when I'm doing work on the house proper, when I'm doing stuff that I don't want a watch to get banged up. This Arnie could probably handle most stuff too. And I do wear it on the bench an awful lot. I love that G-Shock. I've got the 5610U, which is solar and resets its time accurately every night at 1 a.m. to the satellites. I don't like the Velcro bands, but I do like the G-Shock. And I've got two of them. I've got the Casio as well, but I don't wear it as often. I've got a lot of Seikos and a lot of Casios. I like Seiko as a concept, but I'm looking here. No offense, Houston Row, but that's exactly what Rolex is designed to do and can do. Rolexes are really well-built, tough watches that sadly for the rest of us got adopted by the luxury market, and the prices have gone crazy. And so they're supposed to be tool watches, and people can't use them for tool watches very often anymore, but a lot of real tools have them. I got a good friend who has like 7 Rolexes, and he's a great guy. But of course, his are all Explorers, very different thing, but also very, very tough. And they're not brand new, and there's no diamonds involved. All stainless steel, not a lot of gold. Just very good watches, not, oh, look at me kind of thing. But I do like, some of my favorite watches are 10 to 20 bucks. Let's see. The only Breitling I like is the Navitimer. All the other Breitlings are a bit douchebaggy, in my opinion, and some funky designs. But the Navitimer is the watch that Miles Davis wore, and so it will eternally be cool. Let's see. App questions again. If the cost was equal, it would be better to buy a vintage Fender Bassman head and have it completely serviced, or have Mojitone build one for me. I would say it depends on what the vintage Bassman cost you. Most of the conversions that I do and the restorations that I do end up costing the owner between $350 and $500, depending on how much work is necessary. So if you buy the amp for $1,000, $1,500, and you end up having $2,000 into it total, what is the Mojo Tone plus build cost? I don't know. I know that you will have a better amp if you have the basement and it is restored by someone who works at a certain level. I aspire to that level, or Brad or other good techs. I'm not saying that it has to be done by me. It'll be a better amp than what you get from Mojo Tone. But Mojo Tone does make a very good amp. So I don't know what the cost of the Mojo Tone build is. I suspect it's probably very close to $2,000. And I don't know how much the going rate on a AB165 is right now. Let's see. Wouldn't it be better to buy a snap with signal in rather than just on idle? No, because you're measuring the idle dissipation. Well, I want to know the idle dissipation, which is the tubes without any signal. And then I will sometimes also, sometimes inject signal just to look at crossover distortion and all that. But I don't worry about crossover distortion as much as other techs do, because crossover distortion is a shifting target. Because if you are giving it a 1K signal and you adjust the bias until the crossover is it's smooth and those little bumps go away, well, then you go to 400 hertz, you have bumps. And you dial that out with bias, and you go back to 1K, you've got bumps, or you're not getting your maximum voltage. So you got to pick one thing and not worry about it too much. I think crossover is overinflated. Mostly, I just want to know that it's in a safe range, because wall voltage changes all the goddamn time. And so I'm not concerned about this. Amp must be precisely idling at 54%. I want to know that the amp's not going to go above 65 if the wall voltage goes up to 130. I want to know that the amp's not going to go below 45% if the wall voltage drops to 108, which can happen here in Memphis. So if I know that the amp is biased so that it will always be in a good, safe range for the owner, that's my job. Now, if an owner owns a recording studio and they have a regulated power supply, and they will always be feeding that thing 114 volts, and they want that thing to always be optimal for a specific sound, then I'll say, all right, I'm going to play around with this. All right, this amp wants to be at 64.5% idle dissipation. That's great, because I know the amp will stay there so long as all the environmental factors are controlled. But that's really a rare use case. Hey, Yannick, welcome. I'm glad you found us. In the oranges, there's no real way to upgrade the control pots, because the control pots are a big part of what hold the main circuit board in place, because they are board mounted. And I mean, you could install standoffs that support the board and then some independent pots. But given the space between the center line of the pot and the surface of the board, you'd have to use pretty much the same form factor. So a 16 millimeter pot flipped up so the leads are, connections are on top of the wires. It's a lot of work. And then you've got a very thick panel. It's an odd design with a very thick panel, which is why they did what they did. The best solution they could have done would be to use a higher quality pot shaft, but they don't want to have them custom made, or to at least use press-on knobs for the split shaft pots rather than the screw-on knobs. They have set screw knobs on split shaft, really long, flimsy metal pots, and there's not a great solution other than to rip it all out and hand build an amp, and be much cheaper just to build something else from scratch than to make modern orange really great. But modern oranges are really good. They're just not really great. So if that works, that's fantastic. I think it's an odd choice that they make. Let's see. Let's see. I'll try to find the next question. Do I like spring drive Grand Seikos? This is a wide-ranging thing. I like them. I like that they exist because the spring drive technology is amazing, and I think that the finishing that they're doing on those Grand Seikos, like the snowflake and the lake surface textures, are beautiful, and they're immaculately made watches with terrible bracelets. But they're just so boring. They're just so boring. They're really bland. Once you step back 5 feet, the details are amazing. What's happening behind the scenes is high horology. Amazing that people can make things like that in such a small size. But they just look so bland to me. And if I'm going to drop $5,000 on a watch, I don't want anyone to say, "Oh, is that a Citizen?" It just looks like something you might get at Dillard's or Macy's on sale, even though it's very much not. Can I put a switch on an ultralinear output transformer to use the ultralinear? Or yeah, you can do it. You can operate it in ultralinear, or you can operate it normally. You will need screen grid resistors for the normal operation, but yeah, you absolutely can. I would suggest putting the amp in standby before you make the switch, just to eliminate any chance of arcing. But other than that, no problem. You can do it. And triple check the bias that might change a little bit to make sure you don't go over a safe amount. Let's see. I have not tried the 2 temperament guitar necks because I'm happy with the necks on my guitars, and many of them aren't going anywhere. But I'll look into that out of curiosity. Some updated vids on guitar setups. Well, thanks, Houston. Yeah. My channel is aimed at players, not at techs. Techs, I'm glad if techs can get something from this, but I do try to be like the interpreter between amp tech world and musicians and players, because I like to think I'm still a player, even if I'm rusty. I just think there are better channels for guitar setups. I share what I know, but compared to like Ted Woodford or what Brad puts out, a lot of stuff I know how to do, but I don't do it because I don't have the tools for it. And I don't want to say, I want to keep doing that. I want to just start doing that again. I'm going to go buy $5,000 worth of tools just to get back to where I was. So. But I do quite a bit of setup stuff from time to time. Let's see. I see someone saying no Roach in my Princeton, but I don't see a question before that about his Princeton. So maybe something got missed. I'm not sure. Princeton has a bias trim. It does not have an opto. It doesn't have the Roach. Let's see. Hey, George Battis. Sorry, Bedea. Sorry, it's small on my screen. Thank you very much for finding it. Yeah, the Excalibur 15 is my own design, though it's heavily trying to bring back things from the 62 AC15, which have not been made in other amps in a long time. I'm not sure about cost because I was going to do it initially just a few, maybe 10 or so custom to see if the interest was there. But I've run into so many problems getting even the things I wanted to make the second one like the first one. And I'm having some things happen in my life where I can't say, all right, to make this happen, I'm going to go get a $40,000 loan to do a production line. So I don't know. It's a tough thing. I see so many people with bad designs and successful companies, and I just am having a hard time getting a good idea funded. Let's see. Should a Fender clone have shielding too? All amps should have shielding. Some amps should have complete shielding. Other amps you can get away with just having 5 of 6 sides of the cube, the chassis shielded. Some amps you have a rear panel that doesn't have shielding. That's fine. But other times it makes a big difference to have that shielded as well. Appreciate you guys thanking me for doing these. I look forward to these too. It's nice. It's nice to have one time a week when I can talk about what I do and not have people around me fall asleep. I don't think I could rock a Cartier silk scarf. Get snagged on my stubble anyway. Hey, TJ Sound. He's been gigging with a Fender Princeton Reverb 68 reissue for over 2 years with 0 issues. Great. Plenty loud enough in a classic rock band setting. Thoughts? I think that's great. And I think they're good amps. They can just be a little bit better and last a good while longer if you move the hot stuff off the PCB to the octal sockets. I'm not a fan of some of the speakers that Fender is using, but the 68, I believe, is using the G10. The 68 Princeton is using is that right? They're using the G10 speaker that Selection makes, in which case you're very lucky that G10 has lasted 2 years, because I've had like 10 of them come in blown in like 3-month-old amps. Where's that sourness? Not too bad. Okay. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the 65 reissue series, and the 68 I wish was better, but it's not bad. You've called it Portishead. Portishead's what you poop in at a music festival, man. Portishead. I've always said Portishead. I much prefer that than thinking about what was it? The little vignette from the Woodstock movie, the Santa whatever man, the guy who cleaned out all the porta potties. Hey, Mark. Sorry, I haven't seen the email about bending a aluminum chassis. ETR caps any good? I'm not familiar with ETR caps. I'm sorry. I'm glad you were able to straighten it out. Thanks, Houston. Appreciate that. I'll put that towards the Tone Scarf Fund. Portisan, that's right. Speaking of buckets and Mr. Creosote. The JTM 60 is one of the worst things Marshall ever did. The way that the boards slide in interlock and things catch on fire, they really should have used a chassis-mounted big wattage bridge, and they didn't, and the board burns. Avoid the JTM 60s whenever possible. I have not hit pause on the bathroom remodel intentionally. I've had some things happen with the family where I've not had the time. And I hope to be able to get back to that Monday. I've got to take the old ceiling down before I can progress. Yeah, prices are nuts. It just drives me nuts. The reissue and the JVM series, they're okay. I wouldn't spend the money on either unless you're in the UK and they're significantly less expensive there. The JVM, I don't know. I don't know that there's a single sound in the JVM, say like the 410H, that couldn't be done better with a digital modeler. And there's so many buttons on the damn thing, and there's so many sounds, but nothing fantastic. I think to some extent, like the much less expensive DSL 40 CR makes sense. It's for people who are doing top 40 gigs and they need 3 good tones, but none of them are the best tones in the world. And the JVM is just like, well, now we have 6 tones, and it does everything but any one thing well. The Silver Jubilee reissue is kind of meh on every level for the price they charge for the thing. I'm sorry, I'm not being a snob. I'm not saying you must get an original, you must spend thousands of dollars. I just think there are so many companies making better options than Marshall these days for those same kinds of sounds. You know. Once I mentioned mods for the JCM800 2210 for the clean channel. Can't find the video again. It's the 2210, the split channel reverb, or I don't recall. I'm sorry, I don't remember, Nicholas Fassard. I have to look that up. Maybe next time I'll look that up and we can figure that out together. I have a hard time remembering strings of letters and numbers, so. I would not buy a Morgan anything. The G12H Creamback and the Alnico Gold are both fantastic speakers, but I would sell the Morgan and buy a better amp myself. Well, I think it'd be like 3 or 4 of us watching an amp, half watch stream, so it'd be a very, very little watched stream. Hey, Lucas, my Canadian friend, thank you very much. I am waiting to see in what ways the tariffs impact this industry directly in terms of parts availabilities and all that stuff. I know that I just paid about $20 more to get some stuff shipped to me from Germany than I did 6-7 weeks ago. And I'm keeping notes of this, and when clients say, hey, why does this cost so much, I will be able to show them the same way Amazon was rumored to be threatening to show people. And I think it's insane, and it's bad economics, and ill thought out, and shows a true simpleton's grasp of how the world works. But we don't want to be political and mention that these simpletons have no business making these decisions, and they don't know what they're talking about. And every economist in the world, including the most conservative bastions of right-wing conservatism, have said, are you insane? This is stupid. Absolutely stupid. And yet it's happening. Unless people do a deal, because we're definitely sticking to this, and we're definitely going to bring back American manufacturing, even though that would take decades, and no CEO worth anything would make a decision on investing in a factory based on this blundering chowderhead who keeps changing his mind. So how are you going to decide to build a new factory when 6 weeks later, no, it'd be better if you just stayed in China all along? It's a bizarre display of ego and incompetence and utter unawareness of how stupid he truly looks. But I'm not being political. These are just observations about humans. And I hope that we all survive it. And remember, the electricity that brings you this channel, the parts I get are one thing, but the price of everything is going to just go crazy, and the availability of everything is going to diminish. And the fact that this idiot who can't find Canada on a map wants me to hate you because you're Canadian, the fact that anyone wants me to hate anyone because they're not American is deeply offensive and un-American, might I add. And the fact that I have friends from all over the world, that matters a lot to me. I value you all. I don't think America is the best country in the world. I think we could be if we ever tried, but we try very hard not to be. I would love to see us actually earn that mantle. I would like us to be the home of the free, and the land of the free and the home of the brave. We've been telling ourselves that, and then I see all these acts of utter cowardice and incompetence and malfeasance, and people keeping their heads down, and people caving to this crap. And the fact that people want me to be mad at Canadians or invade Denmark, it's lunacy. It's just lunacy. Here are some words that I know, that many of you know, and the cat anus fucktard does not seem to know. I'm talking about his mouth, by the way, and his personality. Sword, Utah, gold, Omaha. Where was Canada then? Right there with us. Where was the UK then? Right there with us. Where was Australia? Right there with us. Throughout the whole thing, the French resistance was right there with us. Norway had their resistance there, right there with us. Denmark has always been one of our biggest allies. For these idiots to think that you can monetize this shit and make money off this and threaten people. It's a nice world you got there. Be ashamed when something would to happen with it. Oh my God. And we're all living through this, and there's nothing to do with economics or conservatism or spending versus savings or projected income versus investment in anything. This is just idiocy that appeals to the lowest common denominator of idiots. And what this guy is a true idiot's idea of what a rich, powerful person is. This is the mental midget of mental midgets. And he doesn't even know what the Declaration of Independence is. And he's got it hung on the damn wall, and he's never read it, but he likes to show people it and say, it's a great thing, independence. It's all about love. It's all about unity. No, it's the opposite of that, actually, idiot. It's not about unity. It's about standing up for principles despite what the government says, the reigning government at the time. And he has no idea what it means, no more than he has ever read that Bible that he will hold upside down to protest against homosexuals and their rights, or that he will sell you with his name on it, made in China, while telling you how much we need to bring back American manufacturing. Speaking of watches, right before the election, he was trying to sell us multiple $1,000 Trump-branded watches that were made in China. And everyone in the watch industry laughed because these were $50 watches that idiots were buying for thousands. And this is what is happening to the world. So if you're a Republican, you got to think this guy's crazy, or have you already tuned out now? But because there is nothing conservative about this, there's nothing fiscally responsible about this, it is just a horror show, and they're trying to drag us all down with them. So, and I'm at the point watching this shit show, and I've tried to be apolitical on the channel, or make the channel's focus not about these things, but it is just getting to the point where we can't avoid talking about it. And if I lose subscribers over this, fine, I don't care. I'm going to go to Penzies after this and buy a whole bunch of spices. I will vote with my dollars. You can vote with your viewing time. You can get your free back. I don't need a subscriber enough to remain quiet on everything. That said, this is not Lyle's take on politics. That's not why people come here. I will mostly just be talking about amps and guitars and bullshit like that, because it's fun to have a break from all that stuff, because all that stuff is just weighing us down all the time. But to my Canadian friends, to my Portuguese friends, to my German friends, to my Scandinavian friends, to all my friends from around the world, all of you, this is not who we are. I don't know any Americans in my social circle, which is pretty wide, who agree with this. We're all watching this. Can you believe what these idiots are doing? Taking Palestine to build resorts. It is just the most blatant form of corruption. Going after Harvard for free speech and then saying it's because of anti-Semitism while they want to turn... Palestinians are Semites, people. I'm just watching this whole insanity happen. And I almost wish that I had a big platform on other subjects, because I watch the Joe Rogans of the world who have millions of followers, and the guy has no clue about anything. Has educational level of a flea. Though to his credit, even he's been like, hey, wait, this is crazy what they're doing with the secret deportations. Even he's waking up to this. But the fact that he supported the fucker, and he did not have a clue what he was talking about. And all these people just thought they were going to own the libs and suddenly miraculously make a lot of money, and all the economic woes would go away. And that's not how any of this works. That's not how any of this works. So consider us libs owned. But now everything is theirs. Everything is yours. You won. You got it all. And what are you doing with it? Because we're watching. Wow, that's a pretty big stock market tank. Let's see how well this plays out. Anyway, we're well after 4 o'clock. I've got to run out and see my mom. She's at the hospital, which is one of the reasons I've not been able to do any bathroom stuff. And I've got to, I don't know, the venting's good on one level and bad as well. And Mark, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. I hope I didn't step on everyone's questions by ending the chat with that. But someone asked me, and I try to avoid it, but I don't want to lie about it because it's so easy just to lie about stuff like this and not say anything. It's just crazy. And read Animal Farm. Read Animal Farm. It becomes very clear. No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. Peace out, y'all.